All right. Welcome back to the Vicious Cycle podcast, Whiskey, Women, and Water. It has been far too long, and I apologize, but I've had quite a bit of stuff happen in my life, and I won't make excuses, but this has been long overdue. So, my guest today is a friend of mine and also a gentleman that I already had in the studio one time, and I kind of frapped it on his recording. And he was super patient with me. He took the time to wait around, and he was supposed to be my first live stream guest. And then I I just fuck it up like over and over again. I just could not get it working. And then we did an audio recording and it was pretty good, but this is someone that I wanted on this show for a long time. So I wanted to make sure I really got it. So without further ado, I'd like to introduce you to my friend, Will. Hey, Will, welcome back.
How are you?
Oh, I'm glad that things seem to be up and going. So you'll have to pardon me if I ask you some of the questions over again, because, nobody heard them last time.
Right.
And I was going to dig through some of the audio, but honestly, the audio stuff is just going to be so much higher quality. So why don't you introduce yourself, and why don't you tell the folks at home, well, how did we find you here today? How did you find yourself
in Hawaii?
In Hawaii. Yeah, please.
Well, I grew up in Maryland and was an avid water person, loved the water, spent a lot of time on Chesapeake Bay and Ocean City, Maryland in the summers, and loved the fish, loved boats ever since I was a child, just a little child in the bathtub with a boat, right? I mean, boats always intrigued me. In elementary school, instead of doing a math test on Friday, I would be drawing pictures of boats, and the teacher would come by to collect the test papers and say, "How come you didn't do your test?" Well, I wasn't interested. I wanted to draw this boat, and that's how crazy it is. But anyway, that's sort of the background. And right out of high school, I went into the Coast Guard, and I knew there was a storm coming. So I thought I'd rather be on a boat saving people's lives than shooting some guy that I didn't know in a jungle 9,000 miles away. So January of 1964, I joined the Coast Guard and spent my time there. And then when I got out and did some traveling, went to Mexico and West Indies, and my surfing buddy and I decided to come to Hawaii in 1968, and it's pretty much history.
Now, I remember one time, or the last time we spoke, and I love this story, and so that's why I wanted to ask. But you had told me you actually learned to read more, or basically really developed being able to read in a lighthouse, lighthouse, right? What was the story with that?
Well, I knew how to read. It's just I didn't have when I was in school and stuff, I would read required reading. I mean, they tell you to do a book report or Oliver Twist or something like that. I don't know if I even read that book, but I mean, say Tom Sawyer or something, right? I would do the required reading, but other than that, I didn't really, other than maybe some magazines, Popular Mechanics, Playboy or something. I didn't. I didn't do a lot of reading, right? But then when I found myself stationed on a lighthouse and had lots of time to kill, because I spent 30 days at a time out there on it. It was isolated. It wasn't on a pinnacle of land or anything. It was out. It was what they call a caisson type lighthouse, which is basically just a big spark plug sticking out of the water, no land around it.
Okay.
And we had our own launch. We had a dory and a motor launch. And so you go out there, you got 30 days on, 10 days off, 30 days on, 10 days off. And there's only 4 of us actually active stationed there, and one guy is always home. So we do a round robin, right? The guy's been 10 days off, and he comes back and he comes on, and the next guy goes off for 10. So with 4 guys, we rotate round and round. 30 days on, 10 days off, 30 days on, around the year, right? So it's a 1-year tour of duty, and I ended up almost doing 2 years. And it's a glitch in the personnel department down, and they kind of lost track of me. And I was happy. I loved the place. I'd have probably retired there if they let me, right? But they pulled me off there, just shy of 2 years. But that's where I really learned to just really enjoy reading and basically, I laugh at and tell people that's where I got my formal education, reading. Read hundreds of books,
Right.
And periodicals and stuff when I was out there.
What is life generally like for someone living on a lighthouse?
Well, depending on the time of year, like in the summer, I just wore a bathing suit. I didn't wear a uniform the whole time I was there, except for quarterly inspections. They would send a junior officer up from Norfolk to do a quarterly inspection. We put basically our work uniform on, like chambray shirt and our work basically Levi's, and boondocker boots. We didn't put our dress blues on or anything for a quarterly inspection. We just had basically our work clothes. Other than that, I never wore a uniform the whole time I was there.
Awesome.
Yeah, I mean, I'd be wearing khakis and a chambray shirt, or whatever it was, but no uniforms.
So, life on a lighthouse, would you consider that? Was that like, do you have to be a troublemaker to get there, or is that actually like a desired position? How does that work?
It's a long story. I ended up in a search and rescue center as a radioman, and I couldn't type very well. And you used to have to all the messages would come in. You'd have to type it out and type it on a teletype and send it to Commander 5th Coast Guard District and all that. And I failed typing in high school. I was a lousy typist, and so I had a lot of trouble. So they put me on the mid watch, which was from 11 p.m. to 7 a.m. in the morning, right? And that was my shift because there was very little traffic, so I didn't have to deal with loads and loads of messages, right? And the personnel officer of the base did not like me for some reason, and I didn't like him.
You fuck his wife or something?
No. No, I didn't even know that I guess, he did have a wife, I guess. But no,
you're looking a little guilty right now with that.
No, I didn't really like the guy too much. My brother was an officer in the Navy, and I knew his shit stunk, so I knew this guy's shit must stink too. So I didn't, because I was enlisted and he was, I didn't count to the fact that he was an officer and I was just a grungy enlisted man, right? So, and he knew I had an attitude about him. He didn't like me either. I didn't like him. He didn't like me. So one day he comes to me and he says, "All right, Lazenby, I'm shipping you off to Smith Point Lighthouse. You got 24 hours to file a grievance or whatever they want to call it, or
petition or whatever."
Yeah, petition to not go or whatever. And I said, I hung my head down, pretending like I was, woe is me, because that's what he wanted, right? But inside, I was going, "Yeah, baby, yeah, I'm getting the fuck out of here." So they shipped me off. They put me on a buoy tender, and we went up from Norfolk all the way up to where the Potomac River flows into the Chesapeake Bay, and it's the widest part of the bay. It's about 35 miles wide there, and I climbed up the ladder and went on there, and there I was. Took my gear up there, and they offloaded diesel and fresh water to the lighthouse, and sayonara.
How's the food on a lighthouse?
Yeah, well, they gave us an allowance. We bought our own food. Periodically, we'd drop our motor launch and go into a place called Sunnybank, Virginia, which was on the little Wycomico River, and buy food at this little general store there. Fish, lots of crabs, occasionally oysters, wintertime duck.
Like you duck hunt?
Yeah,
Oh, that's awesome.
Like sitting ducks in the water?
Yeah.
Oh, we shot them while they're sitting in the water with a 22.
Ooh.
And lower the dory and paddle over to them and get the duck and bring it back.
That's awesome.
But in the wintertime, they would raft up really thick. Just like especially low ceiling. I don't know if you know much about duck. You guys probably duck hunt up where you're from, right?
I don't know a whole lot about duck hunting. I'd be lying here if I
right. Okay. Well, in other words, they call it low ceiling when say the clouds are down to like 500 feet. The ducks don't like to fly, and they'll sit, especially if the weather's calm. In the kind of Malia water, as we call it in Hawaii, flat. And there would be millions of them. Just pick one close. You don't want to row too far to get one. So just get your dinner right there, right?
Yeah.
So that was that's where we got our food.
Yep. What about the fishing off the?
Well, it's a lot of striped bass and and bluefish.
Yeah.
And then we, of course, on the bottom, if you get past the rocks, because they had riprap, big, huge rocks all around this. It was basically a steel caisson that came up out of the water. When they built that thing, it was built in 1894 or 3 or something like that.
Wow.
And then they put these huge they put these round cylinders around, I don't know, cylinders basically. And then they put another one on top till they get above the water line, pump all the water out and seal it. And then they put big, huge rocks all around the base on the outside. Then they fill the inside with concrete. But where the concrete was, they had 2 water tanks. So basically there was 2 water tanks below the certain level where the concrete was. So it was very stable where it was, but you couldn't really fish right down below. You couldn't like send the line straight down. You just get in the rocks.
Right.
You have to cast it out and get in the sand, and you catch flounder and stuff like that.
That's awesome. I remember did you actually have a little side business going there at one point?
Oh yeah, that's where that was my first experience commercial fishing. And I was stationed with the guy that was the first class bosun mate from Ocracoke, North Carolina, named Billy Midget. And he was an older guy, and he said, "Hey, how would you like to make some extra money out here?" "What do you mean?" He said, "Well, about this time of year, the stripers are going to come in really good." Well, back there, the colloquial name for a striper is rockfish in the Chesapeake Bay area.
Yeah.
And also down in North Carolina, that like Outer Banks, right? So he says that the rock will be in really good. We can scoop up, and sell the fish in the dock. Oh, I said, sure. What do we need to do? So next time we took the launch in, we went to a little general store place, and we got a 300-watt light bulb and a socket, a light socket thing, some wire, and we had old 5-gallon steel oil cans left over from because we created our own electricity out there. We had 2 generators, and we run one 30 days, shut it off, and run the other one. We had oil change, so we had buckets, these steel 5-gallon buckets, and we cut the bottom. We took the top off, and then painted the inside white, and put the socket up there, put the 300-watt light bulb, and then on dark nights we'd lower that over the side, not in the water, but just above the water, and shine down.
Oh, cool.
And then when slack tide come, the rockfish or stripers would come up in there like thick. And all you do, we had these boat rods with maybe, 60-pound test on there, and 3 feet of 40-pound monofilament with a hook and a piece of Uncle Josh's pork rind.
Yeah.
And just drag it through the shadows, man. Boom, you're on. Just like boom, you're on. Boom, you're on. We get a couple 100 pounds of, stripers in the morning. We call in so we'd have to call into Norfolk for permission to drop the launch. We just couldn't go willy-nilly and use the launch, right? We'd have to say, request permission for mail run and pick up supplies. And they'd want to know what the weather was like. And we'd always lie. Because if it was 3 feet, or if it was blowing 20 and 3 feet, it was, no, you can't do it. You got to be 2 feet or less, and then you can go. But we would, we'd lie about what the weather was. And we'd go get some supplies, and we'd go to this guy, and his name was Smith, and he was a great big fat guy with big bib overalls, and he ran the fish dock. He bought fish, and he'd weigh our fish, and then he'd pull out of his bib overalls. He'd pull a little pad of paper and a pencil, and he'd go like this. And okay, well, you got 180 pounds of rock and 43 pounds of blues, and rock is 20 cents a pound, and the blues are 10 cents a pound. And I owe you guys, but yeah, whatever it was, right? And then he'd reach into his pocket and pull out a lot of cash. It was like this big around.
Awesome.
With rubber bands around it, right? And he'd go and he'd pay us cash. So basically, we were utilizing government property and making money on the side. I guess the statute of limitations
it's probably passed.
This is like 1966, right? So I mean, I think I'm good that I could reveal all this and not get got pulled in by the
Yeah. Well,
Department of Justice or something, right?
well, I don't know. They are cracking down on a lot of
they
stuff
are,
lately.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah, they want to know your checking account.
Yeah. You know, they might not want to hear this story.
Well, they might want their cut.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
So what would that work out like wages wise, like versus what a Coast Guard guy got paid
Oh,
back then?
I was probably making twice what I'd make a day. I mean, of course, we have to split it. I mean, we're getting rich, but you got to imagine you could in 1965 you could buy a 6-pack of beer for $1.25. What was gasoline was 23 cents a gallon. I mean,
Wow.
I could buy a chicken at this general store for $1.50. I mean, a fryer chicken.
Right.
I mean, it's like the prices. It's like, well, that's not a lot of money, but
But it is.
Yeah.
Well, especially if you consider even in my lifetime, I can remember getting like up in New England, although you can't sell most of them now. I can remember we got stripers occasionally,
Right.
I mean, I know they get a lot more money now, but I can remember like getting 50 cents a pound.
Right.
And it's like, so really the price didn't come up that much.
Yeah, we used to crab too. We used to do the same thing when the crabs would come.
Oh, you guys had crab traps?
Well, no, what we did was we put the light there, right? And we had a ladder that we could lower down on a block and tackle.
Okay.
And we made a basket and we lowered the basket down next to where the ladder was. And we got the old dip nets with the cotton thing where you cut the cotton off and you get chicken wire. No real crabber for blue crawl crabs uses those nets that you buy out of the store with the cotton nets.
In fact, no.
No, you put chicken wire because they get all tangled. So you just scoop them up and then dump them over and they just fall right out into your basket. Dip them. So a slack tide, they'd all float up around the lighthouse there. And we just dip them. But we only got 10 cents a pound for those. But you get enough poundage, you get a couple $100, $20, $30, right?
Yeah.
You go in, if you could make, I think minimum wage in those days was probably $1.25 an hour, something like that.
Wow.
If we make $15, $20 a piece that night cash, that was like, yeah, that's okay. I mean, we didn't have any expenses.
Right. And you're getting
and the other thing, what if we weren't doing that? What were we going to be doing?
Yeah, well, what would you be doing?
I don't know, upstairs yanking the chain. I don't know. But you know what I mean?
Yeah.
It was just a way of filling the time in too, right? And it was fun. It's like, so.
Right. Totally.
You get 2 or 3 crabs, that's a beer.
Right.
That's the way I looked at it, right?
You mentioned it's midget, right?
Midget.
Is that any relationship to like the midget, like the Coast Guard vessel out here?
That Coast Guard cutter called the Midget.
Yeah.
Is actually named after a Coast Guard guy that was like a hero. He did something spectacular, saved a bunch of lives, or did something. I don't really know. I know I read the biop on that, and it's been so many years. But if you go down to North Carolina on the Outer Banks, you got the Midgets, the Scarboroughs, the Yarboroughs, and the Grays. It's all surnames.
Yep.
Big families, like extended families, cousins and cousins. And if you look at the say, when I was in the Coast Guard, there was only 32,000 in the whole world active Coast Guard members.
Wow.
The Great Lakes Receiving Center for the Navy in Chicago, in the Great Lakes,
yep.
They have more people in one naval base than the whole Coast Guard had throughout the world. And that includes Loran stations in the Mediterranean and icebreakers at South Pole, etc. Right.
Right. Wow.
But if you look at the personnel list, like there's a booklet they come out with all the people that are in the Coast Guard, right? And you look at midgets, there's probably today, if you look on the personnel directory of the Coast Guard, active, there's probably 150, 200 midgets.
Wow.
They're all somehow second, third, fourth cousins.
Really?
Yeah.
So that's a long-standing family of tradition
and there wasn't that much opportunity on the Outer Banks. You're either a fisherman or nothing. You know what I mean? Or maybe a boat ride or something. But not back then. There wasn't. Now they got tourism stuff and all that. But back in the
golf.
Day, huh?
Mini golf now.
Yeah. But you know what I mean? That's the guys figure out what they want to do, what they're going to do with their life. They say, well, I'm going to go commercial fishing with Dad, or I'm going to go in the Coast Guard. A lot of guys opted for the Coast Guard.
Right. Well, you said you got in there to avoid Vietnam, but didn't some of the Coast Guard actually end up in Vietnam?
They did. And they did. As a matter of fact, a couple of the 82 footers that were stationed in Group Norfolk ended up over there. One of them was at Point Harris. And funny thing was, years ago, I was at Port Allen, or was it not Willy Willy? It was not Willy Willy Harbor in Kauai. And I saw the Point Harris, and it was still active. And I went up. I saw one of the guys. I said, "Hey, this cutter used to be in Norfolk, Virginia, back in the '60s." And I said, "It went to Vietnam." He said, "Yeah, how'd you know that?" I said, "Well, I'm very familiar with it, right? Because I spent a while on a 95 footer, which was the 95s were being phased out when they're bringing the 82s on board, and so it was like moored, depending on their patrol, but a lot of times it'd be moored right next to where we were moored, So I was familiar with that vessel, and another one called the Point Thatcher, and at Point Thatcher they had turbines, gas turbines on that 82 footer, and after a couple of years they got rid of it because, matter of fact, there's a website, it's Coast Guard sailors, and you can go on there. Actually, it's a sub chapter of Facebook, and you can communicate with all these Coast Guard, and they post pictures of their careers and where they were and stationed. And one guy brought up the Point Thatcher, and I said, "Yeah, I'm very familiar with that. It had turbines, blah blah blah." And they had on the stern, they had the exhaust ports were like 3 feet diameter. These great big huge exhaust ports. And the guy that was writing his side of the deal wrote back and said, "Yeah, you're right." And that said, I was on board when something happened, and that a lot of the water went in there and knocked out one of the turbines. And then it was something else happened, and the other turbine went out, and they floundered. They ended up on the beach, right? And everybody got off safely. And then when they finally salvaged the vessel, it wasn't that bust up, but they tore the turbines out and replaced it with diesels, reciprocating diesels, right?
Amazing that it has such a long career. I mean, that really is truly.
Well, the 82s are now, matter of fact, I've seen in boats and harbors and stuff, where they're selling some people are selling 82s that they've been surplus. They sold them off,
Yep.
I saw one on the current copy of Boats and Harbors. There was an 82 footer. I think they wanted like 90,000 for it, but you keep that thing in fuel would be like
insane.
I mean, how are you gonna justify burning that much fuel?
It would just be a rich guy's toy, like a lot of the big game boats. It would just be a rich guy toy, and you'd have to want it because
it's not even laid out properly for anything.
Right.
It's a patrol boat,
right?
I mean, I don't know what you do with it.
I mean, I imagine they probably weren't that comfortable in the first place, right? I mean, like the bunks and everything.
No, there was no, down in the berthing area, there was no ports. You didn't have any. You had pumped in ventilation. It's like being in a tomb,
Right.
I'll never forget that time that one Radin down there. I think what was that? One of those Al-Shibis or something. That thing where you go down below and then the deep V. I mean, down below, like where the cabin is.
Yeah.
And there was guys would sleep
coffins.
down there.
Yeah.
Oh man, you couldn't get me in there. I'd sleep outside and get wet all night before I'd sleep in that place.
That's on it's the Al-Shibi 4 that has that, like where you go in and below. They've got you step into it.
No.
Yeah. It wouldn't be good for someone who's claustrophobic. That's for sure. Oh, you would hate that one then. Yeah, that would be.
I don't know how I survived. I spent a year on the Mohican, which was a 110-foot tug. And same thing in our berthing area, we didn't have any ports. And you go to my bunk was right up at the top bunk, and I had probably, I don't know, I couldn't sit up in the bunk.
Oh man,
you have to go up and slither in like a snake.
Right.
And it had wires going above me, and these trays where the wires go forward and aft, and then pipes and stuff, and we broke ice too. So when they were pumping water to the bow tanks to break the ice, because what they do is they pump all the water out, get light up forward, and ram the ice flow, and then pump water up to the bow tanks, and they crush the ice and back up. And while they back it up, they they dewater the bow again, and then they run up on the ice again, brush the water up, get the weight, crush the ice, go back. The C&D canal between.
How long did that process take between?
Sometimes all night, depending on how cold it was. I mean, some years you didn't even. Well, we only did it once, but that one winter it was bad enough. We had to go up there from Norfolk and go up and bust ice in the C&D. That's the canal between the Delaware Bay and the Chesapeake, the northern reach of the Chesapeake Bay.
Yeah,
but interesting.
It is interesting.
But that's the way the big, like the north wind, the west wind, the east wind. That they had when I was in, they had 4 icebreakers that go to Antarctica and to Arctica, and that they use the same system, pumping water, run up onto the thing and pump water and crush the ice.
I did not know that.
Yeah,
I didn't know that was part of the deal.
Yeah, it's part of the deal.
Wow.
Of course, all the bows are super reinforced and stuff, right?
Right.
And all the icebreakers also shaped to the point where there's no hard edges, because if the ice forms, you don't want it locking the vessel in. You want the ice as it forms. If you're stuck,
right,
and it forms, they want the ice to form and push it up.
That makes sense.
So there's no hard.
So they get locked in.
Yeah, So if it's just squeeze it, they want to squeeze it up so it pops up like more towards the surface rather than getting locked in and actually getting pulled down as the ice comes up.
Right. Wow. That's pretty wild. I had no idea that's how that worked.
Yeah.
Like, so what about when you see one of those icebreakers that's just like going full on through the ice? It's just thin ice that they're going through then?
Well, I don't know the current ones, but I mean, I guess they could do like 24. The big ones, like the west wind and north wind, could probably do like 24, 36-inch ice, no problem.
Wow.
And it all depends how the pack itself. In other words, if you're going into a thing that's 5 miles deep, right, it's a little different, right? But if you're going into just a shield, it may be a quarter of a mile, because it's got to have. If you're going to bang into it, you got to be able to push it around. You can't. If it's 12 miles deep, and you hit that, it's like you can hit it, but where's it going to go?
Right.
You get 12 miles of it going that way.
Yeah,
it's a different movie.
That's pretty wild, man. I never really thought about that. Huh.
Yeah, it's I look back on it, and I did 4 years, and it was an adventure. And I look back at it now, especially dealing with this website with all these other guys and listening to their adventures, and they're posting pictures. There was a whole lot more adventure out there. I never really got to, but it was the 60s, man. I got out, 1960, just before 1968, man. I was like, it was party time, right? Everybody was having a hell of a time. I wanted to join the party, right? And I didn't want to get in the military. I was like, oh man, I look back at it. Well, you get out, you're just shy of 22, right?
Well, that's prime partying years too.
And you at 22, 16 more years looks like 1,000 years. When I was 38, looking back, I could have done those 16 years standing on my head, and I'd be retired and collecting all this money and doing whatever else. It's life.
Yeah. Well, what is it they say? Hindsight's 20/20, right?
Certainly. Yeah. Absolutely.
So,
yes, sir.
You get out of the Coast Guard.
Yeah.
How the hell did you find yourself in Kona? Like, I mean, there was a surf trip.
Well, not to Kona, but my buddy and I and our girlfriends, we were hanging out in Santa Barbara, working. We all had jobs for like 3 months, and winter was coming on. We said, and we talked about what we wanted to do and everything. And I was the only, out of the 4 of us, I was the only one without a college degree or anything, right? They all had college behind them and stuff. My friend Don, his girlfriend was a school teacher, and my girlfriend, she was older than I was, and she was a grad student at Berkeley. And they were talking about going up to Santa Cruz and taking extension courses and this and that and blah, 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 doing the academic stuff. And my buddy Don and I just wanted to surf, right? And we told the girls, you guys go ahead and go up to Santa Cruz. We're going to go to Hawaii. And said, oh, no, we're going to Hawaii with you, right? So yeah, we all came to Hawaii together, right? And surfed the North Shore. And then we went to Maui, and then we were over Maui surfing and doing this. And then everybody we talked to says, housing is so hard to find. It's real trouble, and they weren't the guys on Maui, the surfers I met on Maui, we were out there in the lineup and talking to the guys and said, oh man, you don't want to be here because it's really expensive and there's no place to rent. And they just didn't want more people, right?
Well, this was in the 60s.
It's
I mean, because that's the same story today, but it's true.
1968, right?
All right.
And they said this, that, and the other thing. And so we went back to Oahu. We were there one day. We said, screw this. We're going back to Maui. So we're going to figure out somehow to make this work, right? We flew back to Maui the next day. And my buddy and I were out at Hokipa surfing, and the girls went into town at Paia, and they went in this little store, and they talked to this guy that had this like secondhand store, like secondhand washers and dryers and refrigerators and mattresses and stuff. I mean, it's like a secondhand furniture store, right? And they got his confidence or whatever, right? And he said, well, I know the house that might be available. And he drew a little map, and he said, this is a real estate guy that takes care of this house. So we followed the map, and when we got out of the water, right, we hooked up with the girls, and we said, we heard about this house. It might be available. So we were just outside of I'm not how familiar you are with Maui, but where Paia is.
I mean, I know where that is. Yeah.
Anyway, Paia. Yeah. Well, we were Hana side of Paia, a couple miles. Went down this torn towards the ocean. Went down this little dirt road. Turned back, kind of going parallel to the ocean. Just past a little Chinese graveyard. It was right on the ocean. Come to this little house, little 2-bedroom, 1-bathroom house, right on the friggin' ocean. Like a plantation style, single wall constructed plantation style house with a corrugated roof and all that, and said, wow, this is cool.
Sounds awesome.
Yeah. And there was a few broken windows and some broken screens and stuff, and the grass was about 18 inches high and everything. But we said we didn't care,
Yeah. Awesome.
So we drove into Wailuku to see this real estate guy, this Japanese guy. It was a real estate guy, and he goes, we all kind of straightened ourselves, looked like we were responsible, right? And went in there and talked to this guy, 4 of us. And he says, yeah, that house is empty. It is available, but there's some windows broken and there's some screens. I said, don't worry about it. I can fix that. I'll do that. And, well, the grass, and I said, don't worry, we'll hire somebody to come in with a big power mower and cut all this grass down and everything. He says, well, the rent's kind of high. Well, how high is the rent? He says, well, it's $75 a month. It's a house on the ocean.
Wow.
$75 a month. And we said to him, do you think we could pay you 6 months rent in advance? He said, oh, yeah, you can do that.
Wow.
So
what a difference in time.
We paid 6 months rent in advance, and all we did was surf and party.
Awesome.
We didn't hit a lick. None of us had jobs. We just partied till the money ran out. We were so a magical mystery tour, right? We didn't even think about tomorrow, right?
Fuck no. That's awesome.
When the 6 months ran up, and then we had to find another place, and we heard about the Big Island. Let's go to the Big Island. So we all came to the Big Island.
Do you know, did the Maui Wowie strand still actually exist back then?
Oh, we were smoking Mexican Michoacan then.
Oh yeah.
$10 for a full ounce. I mean, a baggie this big around.
Yeah. For $10.
$10. In Lahaina, a guy was selling them out of a suitcase at a place called the Whale's Tail, which was a flop house, which is right across the street from. Now it's like a, artsy fartsy boutiques in there and all this stuff. They expanded it, but that was just a 2-story little building with like 8 bedrooms upstairs and a bathroom at the end of the hall. And they rent these rooms out for $10 a month, $10 a week.
What, this guy would just like fly in with weed once a week or something?
He was just there. I don't know. He was always there with a suitcase full of.
Just like the resident drug dealer.
Yeah. I mean, it's like.
So really, Lahaina hasn't changed that much.
Well, the funny thing, the odd thing is you say that, and I'm not a big advocate of. I'm not trying to promote drug use or anything like that.
Right, totally.
But we actually sit. If you know where the Pioneer Inn is, just to the left of Pioneer Inn is the courthouse.
Yep.
Which was also a substation for the police. And then there's the library just a little bit farther down from that. Just right in front of where all the as far as sport fishing boats hang out, right?
Right.
And we sit on the lawn in front of the courthouse and smoke weed, and the cops would walk right by and go, how you guys doing today? Fine. It's like, I don't even think they knew what it was back then. I really don't. If they claim, oh yeah, we've been doing this stuff around here for years. Well, why they walk right past it? We're smoking weed. They had no idea, or they didn't give a shit.
They might probably just didn't give a shit.
I don't know.
I mean, I've definitely heard stories of Kona, like people getting pulled over with open containers back in the day, and the cops just couldn't be bothered. Like,
yeah. Oh yeah, a lot of that happened. I knew a guy a local guy, he was a laborer on a job I worked on one time, and he had 5 DUIs, and he's still driving.
5.
Wow. That's before Mad Mothers and everything. You know?
Right.
Yeah,
Wow.
Like,
what happened to him? Did he eventually die in a car accident?
No, he actually eventually died, but not in a car accident. He died a peaceful death as an old man.
Wow. Wow.
Yeah.
Glad he didn't take anyone with him.
Yeah. And I could say I know his name. I wouldn't. He still has.
No need to trash.
He still has kids on the island, right? So I don't want to say.
Yeah. We don't need to trash talk anybody.
No, he was a neat guy.
Yeah.
No, I mean. Besides, after work, he'd come to work every morning and go to work all day, right?
Right.
Happy-go-lucky guy, great, always smiling, always a great guy and everything, but he just loved to drink.
We know a lot of guys like that.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. So that's part of it for sure.
He was whatever. But anyhow, where were we?
So we're getting our weed every week from a guy in a suitcase in Lahaina.
Yeah.
At some point, I'm assuming you had to go to work.
Well, that's when we decided to come to the Big Island.
Oh,
because we figured the island's bigger, right? And there'd be more opportunity because it's bigger. I mean, we didn't know.
Right.
So we decided, Maui kind of played itself out for us, right? And we heard maybe get.
Did you look for work over there and it wasn't happening?
No, we didn't even.
Nah, you didn't even try.
Didn't even try. Just ran. I sold my surfboard to get the airplane ticket. I mean, that's how broke I was. I sold my surfboard for $30.
Oh, you fucking burned the candle right to the bottom.
Right to the bottom. I mean, the ticket to fly to Kona was, well, we had phony youth fare cards back then, but the base price for anybody, for an adult, to fly on a jet, a 737 from Mount Kahului to Kona, was $18.
$18.
$18. So with the youth fare card, you standby, you can fly for $9.
Unreal.
So I landed in Kona with $21 in my pocket.
So what was your first move when you got here?
Well, I find a place to sleep, which was Kahului Beach Park back then.
Oh, no way. No way.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
Ironically, I've actually slept a few nights on that park myself, but for one reason or another.
Yeah.
You know that piece of shit red house right across the street from it?
Yeah.
That I lived in that for a couple years with this other guy. It was just like it was the biggest piece of shit, worst shack you've ever seen. But we had so much fun there.
Right.
Like we had problems with with the electrician over there and like the electricity, and we'd get an electrician in and they're like, they wouldn't touch any of it. They're like, this is just too old, too dangerous.
Yeah.
So we ended up doing all the electrical work ourselves. And every time we did it, it was like hope and pray. We would be like, and then like grab a wire. It was fucking gnarly over there. But some judge in Oahu owns that. It was like in this trust. And we had like this agreement, like, we're going to charge you next to nothing, but we're also going to know that you don't live here. Like you live here, but if we have any problems, you don't live here anymore.
Right.
You know what I mean? So like everything about the structure was illegal. If anyone went in there, the plumbing was like totally illegal. Like it just like the pipe like mysteriously went into a hole in the ground and just.
Oh yeah, they went down. You know, there was pipe in a lava tube.
Yeah, probably, dude. It was like everything about the house was sketch, but it was so much fun.
You know where they rent the surfboards? That little that house that has a surfboard rental place.
Yeah.
In 1978, I lived in that house. It was a house. I rented that.
So
house.
I just lived 2 houses down from you.
Yeah. So I lived in that house for a year, right? And and that house was be right behind the house, like on the same piece of property was. You could see the foundation of an ancient Hawaiian home, holly. You know, where they stack the rocks.
Yep.
And that whole area back through there, where like the stone churches with all that area back through there was very, very thick with Hawaiian. I mean, that was,
Oh, right.
there was hundreds, if not thousands of Hawaiians lived in that area back in the day. Because I know some guys, Hawaiian guys that live there, right? That they told me in 1972, we were building what is no longer exists called the Kona Lagoon Hotel.
Yep.
And they may have tore that down before you showed up, or
no. When I showed up, it was still there, but it was like post-apocalyptic. Like you could walk in there and it looked like a nuclear. Like you could break in.
Yeah.
Like a lot of people had,
Yeah.
and it had homeless people living in it, and like it fucking was like
But that
crazy.
was a brand new hotel in '72 when we were building it, right? But
how did it rapidly fall apart so quickly?
Well, what happened was, so that was basically built. The money behind that was a Japanese developer, right? And they were going to bring all Japanese tourists in. So the rooms were real small. The rooms were like 10 feet by 12 feet or something, with a little bathroom, right? And it was all projected towards the Japanese tourist, right?
Gotcha.
So I believe it was the early 80s, when the Japanese economy took a dump, because they overinvested in all kinds of stuff, and they took a dump, and that's when their house count went down, and they basically, the developer just walked away from the property. Now Bishop Estate owns the land underneath all that land,
right,
even where the KO Beach Hotel was. That was all Bishop Estate land, right. And so when the developer just walked, they couldn't find anybody else to take the hell to it. Nobody said, well, these rooms are too small. It would cost $20 million to upgrade this place and blah, blah, blah. And we don't, so no one wanted it. So basically it was empty for 10 years, and finally they tore it down.
Yeah.
And eventually that's what happened. But they didn't wait 10 years for the KO Beach Hotel.
No, they got right on that. They probably because they didn't want the same bullshit again. I mean, that thing was like a homeless colony.
Right. Yeah.
I got to say, it looks really nice down there.
They want to make a cultural Hawaiian, and it should be, because that whole, I was going to tell you, Wayne, the one Hawaiian guy that I worked with when I first started working there in '72, he said, all this land from here to Keho Bay, all the way up past Banyans and everything, that whole ocean front, all the way back a couple 100 yards, 200 or 300 yards up from the ocean, was all a huge Hawaiian village, was steeped with, it was a viable, that's where they hung out,
that's where they lived.
Huge, but so that's all got history. And he said, there's so much, he didn't say the word juju, but some, like
mana
in this area, right? That he was like, they went to work at the places, he was a laborer working at one hotel as a construction laborer, but they weren't really big on having to do it, but at least it was a job, right? I mean, you had conflicting loyalties, right? I mean, one is to your heritage and everything else. And the other is, well, I need to pay for my car, right? Or whatever, whatever.
Right. I mean, I think a lot of us live in those conflicts every day with certain things, right?
Absolutely. Yeah. Absolutely. But
yeah, no, it is good that they're redeveloping that, because that area, it really is, like you said, it's like sacred, and it just looks so much better. Like it really, really does. It's nice to have those out of there. So,
well, and I mean, we need open spaces.
We do.
Yeah. I mean, I always said years ago, I mean, go back 25 years ago, I said, what we ought to do is every square inch of oceanfront land that's not developed should be, you compensate whoever the owner is, give them whatever money they want, but that should be preserved for the future of all the children coming in the future, right? So we don't know how many children are going to be on this island in 35 years, but they need to go to the beach. They can't be, like, I'll give you an example. Like when I lived on Maui, we used to go ride from where we lived. Like if the surf was up by Honolulu Bay, up past Lahaina, up around the corner.
Yep.
That area now, I don't know if you've been there, it's all condos, big $5 million condos, gated communities and all this other stuff. You can't even get to the beaches that we used to sleep on. Like we drive up there the night before because we knew the surf was going to be up. and sleep on the beach next to our surfboard because we're going to hit it first thing in the morning rather than drive all the way from where we were, right? You can't even get to those beaches unless you're paying $500 a night or more,
right,
and go through the gate and all that stuff.
I know that's so broken.
And so, so what about the kids on Maui, the future generations? That's why I said they should just take, and okay, if you want to build your hotel, build it 200 yards inland.
I've always thought that. I've always thought they should.
You don't have to be right down on top of the water. You can spit in the water from your lanai. You know what I mean? But shit.
I mean, it's not even a great way to build, anyways, because you always end up having problems with the ocean moving back and forth.
Right.
And,
and you gotta worry. I mean, I think the people, rich people are good. They create jobs. God bless them, right? But you got to think about everybody.
right.
I
couldn't agree anymore. Like some places in Indonesia, I had a crew member. I had a crew guy recently who got hurt on the ride in. He banged his eye, and we had to take him to the emergency room. And we ended up going the lower road to the hospital. And he was amazed that the beaches here were still free, because at his home now you've got to pay for parking. You have to.
This is Indonesia.
This is in Indonesia, not all of Indonesia, but in some parts, like where he lives, you got to pay for parking. You got to pay to have a spot to sit on the beach. You have to pay to go in the water. Like, they've let that get privatized. So certain areas, people can have a beach like right in front of them, and they can't even afford to go in it because it has basically just been privatized, where like he can't take his family to the beach because every last element of it cost him money to go in the water. It's
criminal.
It's criminal. I think the beaches should be for everybody. I really do. I really believe that.
Oh, there's an old song that came out in the early, when they had the Hawaiian Renaissance for music, right around the early 70s, late 60s, early 70s. And one of the songs was, the lyrics goes, "The beaches they sell to build their hotels, like my papa and I once knew, singing Waimanalo blues." You ever heard that?
I don't know that I've heard that, to be honest. I'd like to say I have, but I mean, it sounds nice.
Oh yeah, I mean, it's.
I mean, it sounds relevant for sure.
Soulful lament on the fact that literally the beaches that they're selling to build their hotels. My papa and I once knew you could just walk freely on the beach. There wasn't any. There wasn't. You go to the beach,
right?
Now you go to the beach, you got to put on a good shirt so you can walk to the lobby to get to the beach if they'll let you. You know what I mean? It's like, now they've got access, they have to have access every 300 feet along the coastline and all this. And they can't restrict you from going to high tide, but that's not enough. I mean,
it's not enough. I agree.
Yeah.
That's a huge issue facing so many places, yeah, that's the one thing, right? You dream about a beach house, but same right, you're taking away that access from somebody else.
Well, yeah. At some point, I mean, it's lots of problems.
Yeah, that's for sure. Okay, so we're building a hotel.
Yep.
How do you become captain? How did that transition happen?
Oh, okay. So, like I said, I've always loved boats and being on the water and fishing and all that stuff. And I was working construction. I didn't want to. I'll get back to it. But anyway. I came to the Big Island. I got a job at Kona Village.
Okay.
Because my buddy and his girlfriend went out there and got jobs. And they said, "Come out here. They give you a free place to live and 3 meals a day and pay you." Because housing was a problem. And Kona Village is way up the line. You know where Kona Village is, right?
Yeah, I did. Yeah.
Well, the highway didn't exist. So you know where Makalei Golf Course is up here?
I do.
Right?
Yeah.
Across the street. If you look, next time you're up there, the entrance to Makalei Golf Course, you look across the street.
Where it drops down.
You look across the street of the highway, right?
Yep.
There's a little house in the bushes there with a gate, like a cattle gate.
I know exactly where it is.
That used to be the entrance to Kona Village.
Wow.
7 miles down a 1-lane Jeep trail to get to Kona Village.
Wow.
7 miles. That's 9 miles from that point into Kailua to Palani Road and junction of Kukini Highway is 9 miles from there down. So it's 9 miles up, then 7 miles down in a 1-lane Jeep trail. That's why they had employees' quarters down there. They had a bunkhouse in the back. and you get a room, with
well, kind of a small world, but that house you're just talking about there,
Right.
right below the golf course. I actually looked at renting that at one point. That flat area below the golf course there, we wanted to put an archery range in there. But when everything was said and done, Makalei, they even though we were going to have our own insurance and everything, they just couldn't get around that. So I actually know exactly what you're talking about because I actually looked at renting that piece of very property.
Right.
Yeah. Yeah.
So anyway, I was working in Kona Village, and I was there for a while, and it was all good. It was an adventure, and there were some things some things went a little haywire. We got partying too hardy down there, and they gave 7 of us our walking papers one morning.
Oh no!
Because we had partied too hardy with the customers. Right, we had all the customers back in the employees' quarters, smoking weed, drinking beer, and listening to Jimi Hendrix. Right, and the general manager showed up.
Oh boy!
So 7 of us next day were 86 out of there.
So how long did that job last?
Not long enough. I was there a couple of months, and then it's like they say, get the hell off. You got 30 minutes to get off the property. Here's your paycheck.
Oof.
I said, well, I'm flying out. He said, well, see, you don't understand. They used to have their own airfield there.
Oh, wow.
They had their own 5,000-foot runway, and the twin-engine Cessnas used to bring in. The tourists never came on the road.
I didn't know that.
The tourists came on by plane.
Wow.
The plane, boss, the plane.
Ah.
You know what I'm talking about?
Yeah, the little guy.
Yeah, the plane boss. Anyway, anyhow, so I said, well, we'll give you a ride to the top of the hill, they said. I said, I'm not going that way. I said, I'm flying out of here. I'm going to Honolulu. You can't do that. I said, yes, I can, and I will. Oh, you can't do that, but that's for the tourists. I said, no. These planes, these Royal Hawaiian Airlines is controlled by the Federal Aviation Administration. You cannot deny me buying a ticket on that plane to go to Honolulu. That's against federal, and I'm a veteran, so I know my rights.
Yep.
Oh, and they caved in quick.
Yeah.
I said, well, I'll see you in court, and you're gonna. Anyway, no. I flew out of there. I'm going like, flying out of there. It's like, so I flew to Honolulu and got my merchant seaman's papers because I already had them because I'd been in the
Coast Guard.
Yeah. So I took an ammo ship to Vietnam.
Really?
Out of Honolulu. That's another adventure. We don't need to get into that, but
I don't know. That sounds like a pretty cool adventure.
That's another episode of my life. But anyway, so I eventually ended up back in Kona and working construction, right? And I didn't want to go back to asking people what they wanted on their salad, right? So anyhow, so I got into construction. You're a waiter, right? That's what you do. So
well, you just yada over an ammo ship. That sounds awesome, but
it was a little spooky.
All right, come on, you got to tell us a little bit about an ammo ship. Come on, Will, how does that work?
Well, I wanted to ship out of Honolulu, and I waited, and I ran out of money, and I was basically sleeping in Ala Beach Park, and I'd go down to the Union Hall, the Seafarers Union of the Pacific, every day or every other day or whatever, and say, you got a trip for me, because I already paid him $30 provisional membership, right? Provisional means you're not really a full member. But
yeah. It means we'll take your fees.
They'll take your money, right?
Yeah.
So finally, I went down there one day and says, I got a trip. I got a ride for you. They call it a ride. I got a ride for you. And here's the thing. You got to go down to Pier 4 and sign the ship's articles at the Coast Guard. So by this time, I didn't give a shit. I just want to get out of Dodge, right? Because Honolulu is not my favorite place, right?
Right.
Even back then. And so I go down to Pier 4 and I walk, and I'm looking pretty scruffy because I've been sleeping in Ala Beach Park for a week, right? And the Coast Guard guy takes one look at me. He says, "You know where this ship's going?" I said, "I don't care." He says, "It's going." He says, "It's going to Southeast Asia." And me and I was naive, right? I'm thinking, oh, Singapore, Hong Kong, Bangkok. All these exotic places
right.
I always heard about where the girls are pretty and you know what I mean?
Yeah.
I'm a young man, right?
Right.
I was 23 years old, right? I was like, yeehaw. But he says, just going to South. I said, I don't care. He said, well, okay, sign right here. He says, you got to go out to Pearl Harbor to get on this is where the ship is moored at Pearl Harbor. And that didn't even register then. I was thinking, well, Pearl Harbor, it's a harbor.
Right.
I knew the historical significance of Pearl Harbor, but I didn't realize. I thought maybe all the ships are out there, right?
Right.
And I didn't know about Honolulu Harbor or Sand Island or any of that bullshit, right? I got on a bus and I went out there, right? And
Right.
they went in and it says, okay, you got to take the shut. Used to have now they got a causeway to Ford Island, but back then they had like a shuttle boat, take the tourists to the Arizona Memorial.
Yep.
And then drop. And if you're going to a ship, they drop you off in another part. And I'm walking down the quay, and then there's this ship. Enid Victory is the name of the ship.
What was it?
It was named Enid Victory.
Enid Victory.
And it was it had been a mothballed Victory ship from World War II. And the Columbia Steamship Company had a contractual agreement with just Defense Department to provide logistics and haul freight. They got the Victory ship for $1 a year, but they had to bring the boilers up and the safety equipment up and man it, and then they would get so much per ton to haul freight to Vietnam, because the United States didn't have enough freighters and on commercial, shipping to really take care of Vietnam, right? To all the crap that they sent over there, right? And bulldozers and whatever else, tanks and airplanes and fuel, and they spent so much money on that war. It's all about the money, baby.
When did you find out you were going to Vietnam? When?
So I'm walking down the quay there, and I see the Enid Victory, and that's the ship I'm going to be on, and the fantail is a big red flag hanging down. Now I was in the Coast Guard, so I know what that red flag means. It means ammo, explosive ordnance. And I thought, oh my God, I'm on an ammo ship to Vietnam. But I already signed the paper. I already signed the papers. I already signed the damn papers. And I at this time I said, oh, well, I'm against the war, but I'll just go along as a witness. I told God, all right, Lord, forgive me. I'm just a witness. I'm a witness to this, what's going on.
Right.
I'll give you the testimony. Anyway, so I got on a damn thing. Plus, I was hungry and I was broke and I was tired of sleeping in Almoana Beach Park. So here I go. Got on board.
How long of a trip was that?
Oh, I think it took like 9 days or something.
Awesome.
I kind of lost. It's been a long time ago.
Yeah.
50, 60. What's that? 60 years? No. It's 1969 and now 70 would be 50 years, right? 70 would be 50 years. 52 years ago.
Wow, man. That's incredible.
Right. And so I think it took like 9 days or something. Those things don't go real fast. 9 knots.
I was just thinking it's pretty fast.
9 knots. 9 knots, right?
Right.
And but it was like a lake.
Wow.
I mean, you could have water skied to Vietnam.
Just scored the weather perfectly.
The biggest wave I saw all the way across was probably 2 feet.
Wow.
And then we got where we were going.
What time of year was that?
Maybe May.
Wow, just really lucky on the weather, huh?
I don't know. I mean, it was just what it was. I didn't know any different. You know what I mean? It's like we got where we were, and then we anchored in this place, and we had to wait to offload. And they didn't have a dock you could tie up to. They sent LCMs, which are like those, like the fish farm got those.
Oh yeah, craft. Like those landing craft.
Like those landing craft, they'd send those out, and when they sent out what they call rocks, which is Republic of Korea soldiers, to be the stevedores to unload us.
Wow.
Now, because of South Korea being next to China, right? And the whole geopolitical thing about South Korea and China and all this, the rocks couldn't be combatants in Vietnam, but they worked as basically as laborers. The South Korean government actually farmed out part of their military to work as basic laborers to the United States government. Wow. But they couldn't be combatants. They couldn't go up in the hill and start shooting Viet Cong and stuff, right? But they were there. Like I said,
isn't that amazing that you did everything to not go to Vietnam and you still actually even ended up there?
It's that's what makes the interesting, and it's absolutely the truth, right? I mean, when I went to Coast Guard, the Vietnam really wasn't an issue, but you could see it on the horizon.
See, it was coming.
And I was such a screw up, and when I was in high school, that I knew I wasn't going to go to college. I just didn't have the grades to do it. It wasn't that I wasn't intelligent. It just I didn't give a fuck. I mean,
Totally.
it was all about drinking and chasing girls when I was in high school.
Perfectly understandable.
So that's all. That was my agenda.
Right.
I mean, so anyway, I knew I wasn't going to go to college, and I knew that something was coming down the line. You could see it if you paid attention to the news. They could see this thing happening, right? And that's why I went. I mean, I just couldn't see myself in a rice paddy shooting at some guy I don't even know when I could be driving a boat.
Right. No, I get it. So when you were offloading there, did you have to work? I mean, like, did you get hazard pay or did you get the hell out of there? How did that work?
We got 10% dangerous cargo pay from the day I left Honolulu. When we got 100 miles from the coast of Vietnam, our pay went up 100%.
Wow. So they paid double.
They paid double. But we didn't have to unload. We didn't do anything. I mean, we basically stood our watches and did what our normal job was on the ship, right? And we had port and starboard. So one day half the crew could go ashore, and then the next day the other half of the crew, it's called port starboard liberty, right? So you could go ashore, and but we were there 14 days. We had problems with the boilers. It was a steamship, right? So at one point, they actually put it on all these Vietnamese welders and pipe fitters that came on board and fixed some of the pipes that were screwing up and leaking and all this stuff while we were in port. And that was a little spooky because then they came up with a launch and all these about 20 of these Vietnamese guys get it. You don't know if one of them is a Viet Cong plant and maybe he's got a thing full of dynamite. It's going to blow the whole thing. You know what I mean? It's like these guys, because you always hear about, like the GIs would be in some bar in Saigon and some gal would come down on a Honda 50 and throw a hand grenade inside the bar. And there's all that kind of stuff going. 69 was probably the hottest year of activity. I mean, they had the Tet Offensive in the spring of 68, but 68, 69, 70, that was going to gangbusters. The war was like nuts, And
wow.
We pulled out at a certain point, and then it tapered off, and then they dropped the ball, and they were taken over in 2 days or something by kind of like the Afghanistan recently.
Yeah, it didn't end so well, did it?
No. People hanging on the helicopters as they left the roof, right? You've probably seen the images of that.
Yeah, I have. That's
historical,
shocking.
Pictures.
Yeah. Wow, I think you were there too. Like, so was there any hairball moments? Like, was there any fighting nearby when you're offloading or anything?
It would be the equivalent, literally the equivalent of being anchored in Kailua Bay. And at night, there'd be firefights in Holualoa.
Ooh.
I mean,
so not that far away.
I didn't have anything whistle past my head, but you knew it was up there. It was happening,
Wow.
And the first thing they did when we dropped anchor, they came out with a launch, and these Army guys came on with cases and cases of these concussion grenades. So right about just before sunset, they would drop randomly, not like every 30, you do it randomly because that way you can't really
time it.
So randomly they would drop a concussion grenade over the side. So
with the idea being,
well, if there was any enemy frogmen going to put some kind of mine or something to blow it up.
That is crazy.
Well, so you got to imagine we're carrying ammo. We didn't unload the first. We're carrying explosives,
like tons of ammo.
Tons.
Right.
So we're not. We didn't unload the first couple of days. So we're sitting there. If they had lit us up, right? If we blew up, everything in the harbor would have taken a douche, right? I mean, it would have been.
What I find incredible is you set off grenades around, but there was no like potential impact of that setting off.
No, not really.
Else?
Not through a. I mean, a concussion grenade. It would blow your eardrums out if it landed 5-6 feet from you, but it wouldn't come through the steel and light off everything we got inside. No.
But you didn't have to worry about any structural damage from a concussion grenade or anything like that.
No, it's apparently not. They did it.
They did it, huh?
Yeah.
And they would just drop them all around the boat randomly.
Yeah, they said all night doing that.
Jeez.
After a couple hours, you get used to it. And you just fall asleep.
Like you would be. What did that like? Was your bunk below water? Could you hear?
No. That's the cool thing about. I've been in play. We talked about bunks being down where you don't have a porthole or anything. No, we were on 01 deck, which is the main deck, our berthing area where I think we had 6 of us in one room, but it was spacious and we had a couple ports, fresh air coming in and all that,
Wow, man. That's incredible.
Yeah.
Wow. So you're in there for 14 days.
Right.
You finally get out of there.
Yeah, we leave. Yeah.
And then where do you go? Do you go back to Honolulu or you go somewhere else?
No, we went, I think the first place we went, and I get this part of the story screwed up because we did go to Manila and then we went to Taiwan, the island of Formosa.
Yeah. Wow.
And we were there, we were in Taiwan like days. I don't know how many days, 6, 7, 8 days, something like that. We were waiting for something. We had to take cargo we had to pick up. The cargo we picked up was basically United States personnel's, like there was like embassy people and people were stayed like at the Taiwan embassy and people, military people that they're cycling out of there and they're bringing their personal belongings back. In other words, they've been in, say, a Marine.
Yeah.
A Marine lieutenant's been at the embassy in Taipei for 2 years. Now he's cycling back. He's going back to the mainland, right?
Okay.
And he's got personal property, right? So they'll ship his stuff back. So we have to wait for everybody to get their stuff. We came back light, really light. I mean, really light. And we took some cars on board and some containers of stuff and this and that and blah, blah, blah. And when we finally left that part of the world, heading back, we did the Great Circle route because the next stop was Seattle. And did the Great Circle route. If you look at that, it goes right across the face of Japan. And off the coast of Japan, we got into a typhoon, the remnants of a typhoon.
Whoa.
Like with like 30-foot seas. And we're light. They actually have to take on, you take on,
Like ballast water.
And stuff, right? Fill the ballast tanks to get you down. But that was a ride. In a ship.
How long did that last?
We were in that crap for a couple of days, maybe, I don't know, 36 hours until it kind of petered off. And then, but for a while, for a full day, we were in 30-foot seas. And it was a following sea. And I remember going back. They have this deck above the 01 deck is the main deck. And above that, there's another deck in the back part of the vessel. And I climbed up there and I was on the very stern, hanging onto the railing, right? And I'm probably 25, 26, 8 feet off the water, right? And as we go down, I'd look up at the top of the waves and the third of the wave would roll.
Whoa.
You roll down. It didn't come, I didn't get wet or anything, but it was just like, and then that's when you're down in the trough, right? And then when the wave passes, then you go up because the waves are going faster than we were. So you're going like this, and you're basically, the waves are coming home from OTEC in a skiff.
Right.
On a bad day.
You got a big following sea.
Yeah, and so you're doing this, and it was pretty wild. I thought to myself, when we were on Maui, right, and all my surfing buddies and everything, we, after surfing, we'd sit around and smoke some weed and talk about, get some plywood and we'll nail it together. We'll build a trimaran and we'll take our surfboards. We'll go down to South Pacific. And I'm thinking, it's a pipe dream, right? Literally, right?
Yeah.
And I'm thinking to myself while I was out there hanging onto that railing, looking at these oceans, I said, one of these plywood pieces of chunks I'm thinking about building, right, would last about 5 minutes in this shit. That'd be it.
Right.
All you would be is flotsam on the water.
Right. Yeah, no, I know. All those home builds seem like a good idea until you meet something like that.
Yeah. Oh, man.
Fuck. I can't believe you're going to skip over that story. That's amazing.
Well, I mean, yeah, I thought, but I didn't know what your agenda was. You want to?
I don't have any agenda.
I thought you were going to get into fishing.
Well, I want to talk fishing, but we kind of,
Yeah, okay. Well,
I mean,
that's sort of. I
want to talk fishing, but I kind of like the whole fishing life.
Well, you asked what led up to it.
Yeah, well, totally. I mean, that's awesome. I mean, wow.
So I fast forward, and here I am back in now in Kona, right? In Kona.
Did you get off in Seattle?
Got off in Seattle. Though the voyage officially ended, right?
Okay.
There, and then you could sign back on, but I was over it.
What, if you don't mind me, would that have been good pay? After that, would that?
I look back on it, and I think when I got mustered off the ship, of course, I spent some money while I was on there because we go uptown, right?
You got to hit the bars.
Hit the bars and
Yeah.
go visit the ladies and stuff.
Yeah, of course.
Anyway, so, but I think, and then you buy stuff at the ship store, you know, this and that. I don't know, not much, but yeah, I think, I don't know if I never sat down to really think about how many days it was totally, but I think I was making 50, 60 bucks a day or maybe more. I don't know.
Yep.
Which back then,
It's good money.
yeah, it was not bad. Maybe I was making more than that. I don't really remember. I just remember for doing, you know, basically you got a free place to live, you got free food, 3 meals a day. You know what I mean? It was like you didn't have any overhead.
Right.
So when you got off, you get a check for, you know, $1,800 or whatever it was, right? Minus, I mean, they took off, you know, what you get an advance when you go to port, right?
Right.
You know, give me a couple $100, I'm going to go uptown, right? You know what I mean?
Right.
It's like, but whatever's, and they take taxes out too, right? So that was net after taxes and Social Security and all that shit, right?
Yep.
You know, it's like, and I didn't care. I mean, I was just glad to be back on soil, you know. I mean, not necessarily land so much, just being away from that whole craziness, right?
Yeah, man, that is crazy.
The thing I saw was, you know, when you go ashore, and like when I was in Vietnam, we walk through this big field before you go through a military gate to get out into this town.
Yep.
Right. There was this field about the size of a football field full of brand new heavy equipment. I'm talking like road graders, front end loaders, backhoes, bulldozers, brand new. They're painted army pea green or whatever that color, army color is, right? But they were like brand new Caterpillars, John Deeres, and stuff like that, right? And each one of those machines is tens of, 50,000,
a lot of money,
yeah. Just sitting there, and you know, all that stuff got left behind.
Oh, totally.
And what I saw is just a huge waste of money, right? And so I don't get political, but even Eisenhower was a 5-star general, right? After his president, when he got stopped being president, and he gave his last speech to Congress, he warned about the industrial military complex. He says that's the biggest thing we got to be worried about, not the Soviets or the Chinese, or it's like the industrial military, because they'll create wars to spend money, so the government spends money.
Yeah, well, I think we see that over and over again, don't we? Yeah.
Look at all the weapons they left in Afghanistan recently.
Oh,
well, the quarter of a million M16s or whatever they have.
Shocking. Well, the only personal experience I actually really have with it is when I went to Tarawa, right? Mm-hmm. And so,
it's historical. Yeah.
Yeah. So
that was even worse than Iwo Jima.
I didn't realize how bad Tarawa was until I actually saw a documentary recently on Red Beach.
Mm-hmm.
Because I knew from being down there it was bad, because the Marines still go there to this day, every year looking for the missing Marines. Like, on one of the searches, actually, when I was there, they had just found like an 800-pound bomb underneath the schoolhouse, where if the thing had gone off, it would have just like annihilated the whole, the whole school thing. But what's crazy there is that to this day, when the U.S. got out, they took all that over. Mm-hmm. They still use scrap material. I have a fishing lure that they use still scrap material left over from the war effort. Mm-hmm. They dug these big trenches when it was time to get out, and because it would be cheaper for the U.S. to leave it behind, they dug these big holes in the ground, just dumped everything in it, and then backfilled it over. Even like full. Like they had stories of like full, like big, like fuel trucks, like the tractor trailer fuel trucks. Mm-hmm. They had stories of taking those and just like driving them straight into the ocean with the idea just that nobody could like use it. Like, how wasteful is all that, know?
Right. We talk about pollution. I mean, we're getting kind of off long, but just, and I've thought about it for years and years and years and years. In World War II, you think of all the ships that were torpedoed or blown out of the water. They were carrying bunker oil and lube oil and diesel fuel.
Oh, yeah.
And airplanes crashing in the ocean with fuel. How much fuel during World War II was emptied into the oceans back then.
Right.
We're talking about pollution now.
Oh yeah.
I mean, a lot of those vessels, World War II vessels, were bunker C, which is nasty shit. I mean, it's thick,
crude.
Yeah, crude. It's basically crude oil. It's one step above crude oil.
Right.
They have to, in order to use that to keep the vessels. I mean, they have to preheat that. There's what they call preheaters on a steamship, right? They have to heat that up to the point where it actually catch on fire. You can stick a match in it, won't catch on fire.
Right.
You know what I mean?
I do. Yeah.
It's like,
yeah, it's pretty crazy stuff how they how that whole works. Have to like break down the viscosity so they can even burn it. It's like, yeah, it's pretty wild how that works on the big ships.
Yeah, they preheat it. They put it through compressed air, and they have like injectors, and basically from crude oil. It's almost a mist when it goes into the furnace.
It's amazing.
Yeah, instant.
Yeah.
But you get your BTUs out of it, right?
Yeah, I'm sure I'm sure the overall environmental impact of wars is not good, especially not for the ocean. You think about all the shit that goes, and well, how about even like today? And some people instantly argue like, oh, you got to train, you got to practice, but like, I've found like, have you ever seen those boat drones? You ever seen one of those?
I believe that they use for target practice.
Yeah, they use them for target practice. I found one of those, and the thing was so full of bullets and stuff, and it was like half submerged, and I was thinking to myself, like,
it's just floating around. It had my mind.
Yeah, like it didn't have any. I don't remember catching a my off it or anything. But I remember like when I first got up to it, I go, "What the hell is this?" Because it just looks like. I mean, the thing's probably over $100,000 or something. Right. Oh, sure. It's like this badass looking boat, and I think the idea was they thought it totally sank, right? But it hadn't. But I just thought like it was so riddled with holes and like how many explosives did that thing have fired at it in the name of practice? And then how much of that other stuff, like how many fish get killed around those things? And like, I don't know, that it doesn't seem like people factor that in for some reason. I don't know. I think about that all the time.
Every time you see those submarine movies where the guy, they drop the depth charges over, and it goes down by the submarine and explodes. Well, how many fish died when that happened? Right.
Oh,
I mean,
a lot.
Blowing the reef up, right?
Yeah, like a lot.
Driving those big landing craft right on top of the reef. All that coral just crushed down. Hey, we're not worried about the coral. We got to go kill some son of a bitches. You know what I mean?
Yeah, that's true. It's sad but true, right?
I don't know. Yeah, I guess pretty good.
Well, I think overall, honestly, we are doing a better job about the environment. But if you think about the wars, we don't take very good care of the environment. No, not at all. No. It's very sad, actually. So
anyway, I'm back in Kona, and I work in construction, and I just go down to the dock, and I go down to the Kailua Pier on the weekend and watch these guys weigh fish. And damn, that looks like fun to me, and then talk to a couple captains, and say, hey, I know all about boats and stuff, and I work for free on the weekend. If you just take me out with you, I'll be an extra crewman or something. And I just got a lot of negative. No, that's okay. Right on. Thanks a lot for offering, but it's like, and I've had that when I was running a boat. People walk up behind the boat.
Oh,
they blah 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 and all this, and you're not even looking for anybody. So I understand. Right. I've been on both ends of the spectrum there, but so I got kind of frustrated, I said, I guess the only way I'll ever get to fish is go get my own boat. So and I was working on this job, Little Ukulani Village up right up down the Plani Road, where the pedestrian bridge goes across. Anyway, we're working up there, and we were building this. A couple buddies and I, we were on a roof crew. We actually framed the roof, put the sheeting on the roof and all that stuff, and the fascia boards and all that. I was like on my 60th roof.
Oh God, you must have been pretty over it.
Pretty over it, right? Here's the thing: from that vantage point, you look right down on Honokaʻau, and every morning I climb up on the roof to do this mundane job that I've done over and over and over again, right? And watch these boats go out like this. Damn. Man, so one morning I climb up on the roof, and it's like 10 o'clock in the morning. maybe it wasn't even 10 yet. Maybe it was 9. We started at 7 anyway. So I climbed off the roof and took my tools and threw them in the back of my truck. And my buddies, I knew very well, right? We were really good friends, and we always worked together. Where the hell are you going? I said, I'm going fishing. They said, you can't go. You can't do that. I said, watch me. I just drove downtown and got a newspaper. In those days, West Hawaii newspaper was 3 days a week. It was Monday, Wednesday, and Friday or something like that. It's a little thing. It was like 7, 8 pages. West Hawaii wasn't much of a paper in those days.
Yeah, it's not much of a paper now.
No, it's not. So I got the paper, and I went to this coffee shop. There used to be a coffee shop down there by kind of basically where that Dolphin Spit place is. It was a bar called maybe you remember this.
I remember the Office.
The Office bar.
Yeah.
We're right next to that. Going towards Firestone was a coffee shop. You know, where you get coffee, eggs, or whatever. You know, hamburgers, whatever. So I went in there, I ordered a cup of coffee, and looking at the classified and looking for boats, and it says 17-foot glass par with 50 horsepower Johnson motor and Calkins trailer, or I don't know if it's a Calkins or Shoreline or whatever it was. $2,500. I call this guy up, and he answered the phone. I said, I see this boat for sale in the paper. Is it still available? And he said, yeah. I said, can I take a look at it? He says, when do you want to look at it? I said, right now. He says, well, how about like you meet me at the ramp at City of Refuge at 1 o'clock. Oh, okay. So I go down the ramp at City of Refuge. That's what they call two-step. You know, I don't know.
Yeah, hold on now.
There was that little funky ass ramp, right?
Yeah.
At low tide,
it's still there.
Even high tide, you got to walk the boat out.
It's still there, but it's a fucking mess.
Yeah, I mean, you got to walk the boat out. It's only a boat so big can take. You know, you can't put a big.
They launched the kayaks.
You couldn't put a 25-foot rad in that. No way.
Right.
Too shallow. Yeah. But anyway, we actually had to launch it and kind of walk the boat out so far, and then drop the motor and start it that way. And he had a little cooler on there, like a 64-quart cooler, and a Rubbermaid bucket, like a laundry bucket, with some hand line and an Ono lure and a gaff and a club. And we go out, and they turn north. I'm going along that little lava cliff just north of City of Refuge. We weren't even gone 15 minutes. And he had like these big 84 rubber bands, you know, 5 or 6 of them on his hand line. Just blew off the cleat, right? Pow! And he stops the boat, runs back, and puts some gloves on, pulls in this Ono and gaffs it and brings it on board. It's like a 40-pound Ono. I said, sold. I didn't think about the price. I saw enough. Right there, I said, I'm done. I'm sold. You got your money. I'll get your money tomorrow morning, right? You know?
Oh, that's awesome.
So I got that boat, and when I actually got possession of the boat, and that Saturday, the 2 guys I was working with, the 3 of us went fishing. And we trolled around and everything. I had trolling a hand line and a spinning rod with a king on it or something, right? That's all I had, right? It coming into KO Bay after about 4 hours, you know, we're coming right in the bay, right? I mean, we must have been in 20 fathoms of water. Boom, we got an Ono. Same way on the hand line. And I was so excited, I didn't even put gloves on. And I was just, holy shit, I got this thing. I was just like, yeah, you know, I got this thing, and it pulled the line and it just burnt the shit out of I mean, you know, you ever had to, you know, it burned. I mean, white flesh, you know, burned. And I didn't give a shit anyway. I mean, it didn't even hurt until afterwards, after I got the fish in. And got this nice, like 30-pound Ono and put it on the boat. And we were jumping up and down like crazy people, right? And it was success. My first trip out, I caught an Ono. This is cool. This is
awesome.
Oh, man, I was stoked. That's how I got it. Then that was just progressed from there, you know.
When did it go from I'm becoming a full-time fisherman? When did it go from a hobby to this is what I'm doing for a living?
Well, so I did it kind of just as a hobby then, and then in next summer was the summer of 1976, and I decided, and I knew. Now I'm reading all of Rizzuto's articles and everything and trying to everybody I knew that fished and trying to talk to them. And like, there's a lot of like weekend warriors, and talking to guys and this and that. And so I knew that the summer was when the tuna bit and the marlin bite better, and then everything bites better in the summer, right? Than say right now.
Right.
And so I decided I was going to get myself laid off of my construction job so I could collect unemployment and go fish. So that was my plan. So the summer of '76, what I did was I realized I didn't have a bimini top or anything, so I was getting French fried out there, and I'll fish.
Sunburnt every day.
Yeah, I'll fish every other day. So I fished every other day that summer and started catching some real fish, right? And caught my first marlin, my first big ahi, caught my first marlin single-handedly. I'd never even seen a marlin, never witnessed a marlin being caught.
How'd that go?
It was a pardon the French, but it was a clusterfuck. But I got it. Everything that went wrong, but I still got the fish.
Like everything that could have gone wrong went totally wrong.
I mean, it's a litany of like, how did this happen? First of all, at that particular time, it was still early in the summer, and I was spooked about going offshore by myself. Like going past, I'd stay in 40. I'd go back and forth and catch Ono, and I got that down pretty good, right?
Yep.
And I bought a rod and reel. I had a Penn Senator 12-0 with a fiberglass straight butt and like a 130 rod or whatever, 80 rod or whatever it was. And I had an old Penn Senator 12-0 with a wooden butt that I bought from a guy. And it was kind of a beater thing, right? And 2 lures out, I'm on pine trees, 40, well, I think I was 40 fathoms, point to point.
Point to point.
Yeah. And and the line goes off. I said, oh, that sounds like a big one, right? I'm looking back at the hole, and the thing is going, ooh, blue smoke's coming out of the drag and everything. And I'm over there reeling in the other line, and I'm watching. I'm looking, holy shit! I'm watching this reel just like go. I gotta hurry, get this thing. And out of the corner of my eye, over here, I see this big splash. Oh shit! I got a marlin. So I reel the line in, run over there, and just as I get over there, now I had those rings. They got these 2 little rings around the plates. I had 2 safety lines because I didn't trust that old wooden butt, right?
Right.
So I had one on each side and tied down tight. And just as I got over there, the wooden butt broke right at the reel seat.
Oh no!
Right at the reel seat.
Oh,
crack, bam, and went down, and it was laying on the gunnel. But now I got the 2 safety lines, and the line is still going out the back, and the fish is jumping over there like 200 yards or 300 yards, and the line is just going like, oh shit. So I unclipped the thing, got it up, brought it around, got it up where, and I used to have a fish box, and I'm sitting on the fish box, right, driving the boat with. Now I don't have any butt. I'm just hanging on the reel, and I'm chasing the fish, right?
Right.
And trying to get a little bit and chase the fish. And I got the rod resting on the windshield, right? Which the frame for the windshield was extruded aluminum, right? So I'm just resting there. Okay, how am I going to do this? So I had a harness, the harness that goes around your shoulders, the old style, right?
Yep.
So I clipped into there. Now I've got the reel hooked to the harness, and I'm hooked to the harness. But I still don't have any butt. So I kind of got it down here and got a towel and stuffed it here so that it's sharp. I mean, there were still little pieces of wood sticking out of the bottom of the thing. And now I got the rod resting on the windshield. I'm chasing this fish. And I chase enough that I get like 20 or 30 yards of slack line, and I'd tighten it up. And then he'd go some more, and I'd go some more, and I get some line, and we go back and forth and this and that. Seemed like forever. Next thing you know, this is like at pine trees. After a couple hours, I'm off, top corner of the grounds. A strong north current that day. I'm out maybe, I don't know, 300-400 fathoms, top corner of the grounds, Still, by this time, it slowed down and kind of had maybe like 300 yards of line out. I had about 300 yards line left. And he's just towing the boat sideways. I got the motor in neutral. And it's literally towing the boat sideways north. With the current too, right?
Yeah.
And I said, well, this son of a bitch has got to give up soon, someday. And I don't know, we got further up the line. I don't know, maybe we were Makalavane or someplace, I don't know, out there somewhere. And finally I got it up. I was making progress and got it up and got it up and got it up. Oh, earlier, little earlier, what happened was, because now this rod was a beater anyway.
Yeah.
But because it was rubbing on the extruded aluminum windshield, right? The frame for the windshield, it wore all the wrapping on the first roller guide was gone. So now I got the roller guide going up and down.
Oh no.
from the reel to the second guide, right? So I had to make sure it wouldn't get back down into the reel. So I had to hold it up.
Oh my God.
And it was like, so now I got the no butt, I got the broken
But you got
guide.
a proper clusterfuck on your
Yeah,
hands.
yeah. So then I finally get up there. Now it's like I'm 3 hours into it, right? And I'm exhausted. And I think the fish was pretty exhausted. I got it up where I could see it, now I get up to the leader. I got to do something with it. I realized, okay, now, all right, what am I going to do? So I get the safety lines, hook it onto the reel again, grab the leader, and start leadering the fish up, right? Well, about halfway up, I look over and it had pigtail swivel. The loop in the leader had somehow going like this and was no longer connected to the pigtail swivel. Now I'm holding on to a leader. It's not connected to anything.
Oh no. And
I got a 356-pound marlin on. That's what it ended up weighing.
Yep.
So, Panic City, right?
So like now you can't let go of it now.
I was standing right in the corner where the cleat was. So I did a figure 8 on the cleat, rehooked it up to the swivel, and undid the figure 8 and continued. But when I looked over, and my heart almost fell out of my chest when I looked over and saw that thing wasn't even connected.
Wow.
Good thing the fish was as tired as I was at this point, I think. So I got him up. Now I got him up and I put a stick gaff in him. But now I'm holding the stick gaff. I had a pretty good headshot too. It was like right up underneath the eyeball someplace, And I'm holding the thing, and the thing is undulating. Boom, boom, its tail. It's like going like this. And I'm holding on to the thing, and it's doing this. And I'm afraid if I let go with my right hand, because I'm right-handed, and I'm holding it with my left, to grab the bat and crack it, that it'll pull the gaff out,
Right.
So I'm just hanging on. So I'm trying to figure out when can I get a break where I can hit him. So I'm there doing like this, and my solar plexus muscles are so sore because they're like, the fish was working me, right?
Right.
And I was exhausted emotionally and physically in every other way, and
probably sunburnt.
Yeah, sunburn. And then I see this skiff coming around, and it's going around looking at me like, makes this lazy circle, and finally it comes up, and they reel the lines in. They come over and say, "You need a hand?" I said, "Shit, yeah." I said, "Okay, let me get this." So they reel the lines in, and they reel the lines in, one batter jumped in the bed. And now we're gonna fish. And now we're yeah, but that was my first. I hadn't even seen one. I hadn't even witnessed, other than watching Old Man in the Sea.
Yep.
I had never seen a marlin caught.
Wow.
Let alone been part of the action.
So did you get to weigh it downtown?
Oh, actually, I got pictures. Yeah, I weighed it at Kailua Pier.
Oh, you did get to weigh it at the pier.
Yeah.
Okay.
And oddly enough, there used to be George Parker's brother, Phil Parker. I don't know if you remember him or not.
Oh, sorry. Yeah, try and talk into the mic there. I'm losing you a little bit.
All right.
Yeah.
Phil Parker was George Parker's brother.
Okay. Yep.
Marlin's uncle.
All right.
And he used to have a radio show, like talking about the fish that were caught yesterday.
Oh, cool.
On our little radio station here, a little AM radio station here in Kona.
Yep.
And I got the biggest fish of the day that day.
Oh, awesome.
Oh,
that must have felt good.
I was like, from 0 to 9, it's like pushed into 15 minutes of fame, right?
Yeah, heck yeah. So what happened to that fish? Did you sell it?
Oh, I sold it to. There used to be a guy named Jerry Kinney at Volcano Island Fish House, where the old It used to be located where the Toyota dealership is now.
Yep.
And after he retired, Suisan took that facility over, and then they stopped, and then they tore it down and built a Toyota dealer.
Gotcha.
But I sold it to Jerry for 20 cents a pound.
Was that a good price then?
That was the average price.
Average price.
Yeah. And I had to repair that rod cost me $90. I lost money on the deal. I said, I don't think it's far fishing for marlins the way to go here. You know,
I think a lot of people lose money on the marlin fishing deal.
I mean, I knew a lot of the guys that were like commercial fishing, even the Weekend Warrior commercial fishing back in the day. They used to call them donkeys.
Yeah, they don't want anything to do with them.
No, they said, you lock the drag up and break them off.
I know a lot of guys that are still like that. They don't want anything to do with them. A lot of skiff guys. But the thing is, the price has actually gone
now
way up on them.
You get, if you had a 200-pound marlin right now, you get $2.50 a pound for it.
Oh, you get more than that, probably will.
Oh, I mean,
I'm
just saying.
Right. No, it's
$400 or $500 a little different than 60 or 70.
Yeah, no, it's come up a lot. You know, like there was kind of like 1 week where it came down a little bit, but for the most part, man, it's been like $3.50, $4 most of the year. That it's really interesting because what we're seeing right now is what fish prices look like without imports because of the pandemic. Right. You're getting to experience what you would be getting for your fish if you weren't, if we weren't just flooded with imports all the time. So it's actually kind of a neat.
Combo's $15.95 retail.
Well, there aren't any Tombos around though either.
Well, somebody's got them. I bought some the other day.
Well,
they're probably bringing it from Honolulu or something, right?
There must be some around, but
long line.
I mean, maybe somebody's getting them, and I don't know. But I mean, there hasn't really been a great Tombo run for a couple of years. Not like the old days. Yeah. You know. So, for those of you listening at home, too, the Tombo out here is an albacore. The tonnage price too on the tonnage price on albacore is really high this year. I don't want to misquote it, but I know that
$3,600 or something like that.
Yeah, it might even been higher. It was I know the tonnage price for freezer big eye was $8. So that's $2 a pound on freezer big eye. So I think it was pretty high. Somebody maybe can chime in on that, but I heard reports that it was pretty high. Well, it's just the
supply and demand.
Yeah, it's really neat to see what fish prices are like without imports. I wonder now you've been in the fish business a long time. It would be interesting if you just started now, say you just got a skiff now, and you're appreciating all these prices. At some point, most likely, the market's going to correct itself, and you might be like, "What the hell happened?" Because I myself have been through that, but. I've been doing it long enough where you see the ebbs and flows.
The last few years when I was running charter boats, I spent time commercial fishing, right?
Yeah.
A lot of time. But years passed, right?
Right.
And then when the last few years that I was running a charter boat, and I'd go and see these guys with these nice 26, 27-foot forces with 200 horsepower, whatever, Yamahas or whatever they got on the
bigger
back. And they got and they're all they got really nice electronics and the green stick and this and that. I'm looking, and then they got to have the truck to tow it. I'm looking at $250,000 sitting there, right?
Oh yeah.
And I'm thinking
easily.
I don't know if I could have, even with the fish I caught back when the fishing was really good, if I could afford to amortize that investment. Fishing locally on, against the island, right?
Right.
As opposed to, going out and long line and coming in with 10,000 pounds or something, right? You know what I mean?
Right.
Doing what I did back in the day. I don't know how these guys make it, except for the price is stiffer.
That seems to be the only thing that really you've got some guys that are buoy fishing, and B, the price is just.
They got wives with good jobs.
And they have why they say that. Well, they say behind every great fisherman is a financially successful woman.
I guess. Yeah. Well, it takes the pressure off.
I'd have to.
I believe.
I'm sure it does. I don't know personally, but.
Well, I mean, you create your own pressure, but I'm basically. Yeah, if you know, if you're not all jammed up, and I mean, the hardest thing to do is catch fish when you're stressed out.
Oh, every time.
Yeah.
Like, have you ever noticed that fishing, if you really, really need it, it's not going to give it up to you. But then, like, when you're like, you'll go on runs when everything is going great and it will
Right.
continue going great.
Right.
But if you really, really like, I fucking need this to hit, I need this to hit.
Right. I've been there.
That's not what it hits, dude.
No.
That's like, you don't fish properly, like with the stress level
No.
or whatever.
You're
the
not.
hell.
You can't even think about what the objective is.
Yeah. Exactly. Like, you're so stressed about like, whoa, don't throw too many anchovies. That fucking case is $25 or whatever. Yeah, no, you definitely fish better when there's less stress. I mean, yeah. So how is it that you ended up from commercial fishing into charter fishing? How did that happen?
Well, actually, it was so it was 76. I fished that summer every other day, right?
On your skiff.
On my skiff.
Yep.
And caught tunas by myself, 200-pound tunas by myself, blah, 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 you know, this and that. And got comfortable where I got hooked up to a big fish. I wasn't intimidated. I knew, okay, this is what you do, blah, 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 and do it, right? And so I married my first wife in December of 76. Went on a honeymoon, came back, and I was in between construction jobs. And I was down Keauhou Bay, and I bumped into a captain named Del Cannon. I don't know if he was a professional surfer at one time, had his own surf company.
It wasn't Happy Times, was it? No.
It was Happy Times.
It was Happy Times.
It was Happy Times. And then they ended up running the Blue Hawaii.
Okay.
You know, the big Hatters that was parked out there were kind of where Atlantis is parked now.
Yep.
He ran that boat. He had his own boat called the Annetta for a long time. The 35-foot Bertram became, what did it become after the Annetta? It was the one that United Pilot owned. Gus Sellers ran it for a while. Different people ran that boat for a while.
Real class?
No, it was an open 35-foot Bertram with no sliding doors. What the hell was that called? It was
Kona Rainbow?
Yeah. That turned into Kona Rainbow. Dell owned that. Dell and his wife Alice owned that boat for a long time.
Okay. Yeah.
And but anyway, so Dell had been a surfer in California. He's older. He's like 10 years older than I am. And he used to be in Bruce Brown, you know, Endless Summer. Bruce Brown, the guy that made all the surf films.
Oh yeah.
Okay.
I mean, I don't know, but I mean, I know his work.
Dell was the guy riding a surfboard with the camera taking a picture. So not only he was on the same wave the guy was on riding the wave, but he was on that wave, but he was holding the camera.
That's amazing.
You know what I mean?
Yeah, that's who the camera should have been pointed at.
They made a movie. He was in one of Bruce Brown's movies where he was the first surfer to ever surf Japan, Del Cannon.
Wow.
So he was in the older stratosphere of professional, big-time, well-known surfer guys, right? But he lived in Kona, and he got into fishing, and he got his captain's license. And he knew me because he seen me launch my boat and everything all the time, you know, and he said, hey, what are you doing? Blah, 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 yeah. And he said, hey, I got my captain's license. I'm running this boat. I need a deckhand tomorrow. What, you want a deckhand for me? And I said, sure, because I wasn't doing anything, right? So I went and crewed for him, and it went good. And the next day, yeah, you want to go again? And the next day I went again. And after about 3 or 4 days, he says, well, you got a full-time job if you want it. And I said, well, I don't know. Let me go. I just got married. Let me go home and talk to my wife, you know, and see what she said. I said, this is what I always wanted to do. I said, the money's not good. The money sucks. Making nothing compared to what I made as a carpenter, right? But I want to do it. I want to do it all my life. She says, go ahead, do it. So I went down, yeah, I'll take the job. So I spent a year, just shy of a year, fishing with him on the Happy Times. And then if we didn't have a charter, I'd take my skiff out. Because it was really cool because you're out there and you're fishing 3 or 4 days in a row on a charter, right? And you can see what's birds are here, this and that, the current's going this way. You kind of already done your research, right? So the next day off, if you don't have a charter, you jump on my skiff and I go, right?
Oh, yeah.
Got to one step up rather than just coming into it cold after.
Totally blind.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So anyway, that's what happened. And I got my captain's license, and Kelly Greenwell offered me a job running his boat, and I did that for a year. And then reality set in about I'm leaving too much money on the table from my construction.
Did that reality set in, or was those the words of your wife?
No, that was I can see the tea leaves in the bottom of the cup, right? It's like, well, it was good. The problem was, see, when I was running that boat, there was only like 18 boats in Kona.
Okay.
Right. And even though there's 18 boats, there wasn't that. We had a good summer run.
Does Honokaha Harbor exist at this point yet? Or no?
Yeah.
It does.
Okay. But the inner sanctum, not the inner sanctum, the outer basin.
The outer basin.
About where the Raptor parks.
Okay.
That was the Malca side of the harbor until 79.
Wow.
So when I was doing this, it was, and the ramp was on the Malca side, the end, it came down from Malca going this way.
Yep.
There's one ramp with two side ramp,
Yep.
I mean, it was one ramp, but two boats could go down at one time. Not there wasn't a walkway.
Okay. Gotcha.
Anyway, and the fuel dock was on the Malca side. Alacana in a 4x4. I mean, a little shack that was about the size of that square, and a little cash register, a little thing, and then a fuel truck. So you get fueled out right of a fuel truck. There was no in-tank fuel, and in that in-ground fuel or anything like
that.
You just run the hose down there and stick it in. But yeah, so I went back to construction, right? At some point I want to get my own house. You know what I mean? It's like I'm still renting.
So we're renting it. Yeah. Okay.
Like,
no, I understand. Yeah.
And well, see, the other thing too is we had the tourist thing. We have a really good summer run from like the 15th of June till Labor Day. Tourists were up. You could go fish every day. You have a charter every day.
Okay.
All right. As soon as Labor Day is over, from Labor Day to Thanksgiving,
no one around.
Nothing. And then you get a little pop at Thanksgiving, and then nothing. And then 26th of December, the day after Christmas, they'd show up. And you have a good run through spring break, tourist.
Right.
But from spring break till the 15th of June, you got nothing. So that year in 78, I had this boat that I was running for Kelly Greenwell, and I'd take it South Point. I'd make trips to South Point and catch Ono, Mai, and whatever else, ahis, whatever I could catch, right? And sell them.
Yep.
That's how I survived. But I was going like, man, this, what carpenters were making, the price has gone. In other words, the wages has gone up and this, and I'm looking, oh shit, I'm leaving too much money on the table here. Plus I didn't have any medical insurance or anything, right? So I was always a union carpenter. So if I was working, I'd get medical for my wife and I.
Right.
I mean? It's like,
No, I think that's a common story even today. I think a lot of guys face that all the time, right?
In 79, I worked on a job, a surf and racket club, the second increment down by Keoho.
Yep.
Worked on that job, and Kelly never got anybody to run the boat. He was just kind of like, well, whatever. He's a Greenwell, he's a rancher. It's like wasn't.
This guy's other stuff going on.
He's got it wasn't a big priority anyway. But that's when guys in Kona about that year, 79, 78, was it? 78. Yeah. That's when the guys just started, the Kona guys just started learning how to eat kashibi.
Was that right?
Yeah, you might talk to somebody. Oh no, we don't know that. No. I know intimately. But those days, I knew every commercial fisherman, skiff fisherman there was in Kona. Right? They just chased. They chased porpoise school. The guys in Kona knew how to fish porpoise schools really good, and then go to ahiko and drop stone and stuff like that. But nobody was ikashibi until those guys came from Hilo and showed everybody how to do it. Takafuji and Mel Brown and those guys.
So what year was that?
The winter of 78.
78.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah.
Wow.
In 79, right? These guys came from Hilo because nothing was happening over there. And they heard that the guys were catching all these tunas in the porpoise school in Kona. So they brought their boats, and that's all they did in Kona. And in Hilo was Ikashibi, right?
Night bite.
They came over here and started. We would go down Keio. They come into Keio, right? There were like 4 or 5 boats that came over. Well, 2 or 3 at the first. Mel Brown and Taka Fujitani came over with their Radins, right? I just killed them. I mean, they come in with 10 and 9. People going like 10. We don't even have boats that hold 10.
Right.
It's like
amazing.
Yeah, and like, how do you do this? Blah blah. Well, this is what you do, right? You get this, and you get the lines. This is what the basket looks like. Yeah, and the guys are running out and doing it. And so that winter, I actually used the boat, Kelly's boat, and went out and started Ikashibian, right? And then
how long did it take you before you caught an ahi at night?
Not long.
Not long, huh?
Yeah, but then so 79. Well, 78 is when they first came over to do it. So by that time, we knew the cat was out of the bag. We knew about Ikashibi, and I worked at this 79. Worked that year building a surf and racket club. And at the end I told Kelly, I said, this job's coming out and I want to lease the boat from you for a month. So I was going to go Ikashibi from the 1st of December through January, right? So I was buying bait and everything. I had bait. I had all kinds of bait, frozen and stuff. My partner had, my good friend of mine who was going to fish with me.
Yep.
He had a big chest freezer, and I was buying a pillow. As every time I could get a chance, I'd buy $100 worth of pillow and stuff and this and that, and getting ready. And then December 1st came, we started Ikashibian, right? We did pretty good. I mean, we caught there might a couple nights we went without catching, but pretty much we caught every night something, at least one,
Yep.
Sometimes 5 or 6, right? And big ones too. I mean, 180s, 190s, 210s like that, not one little 118s and 120s like you see now,
Yep.
All the time, right? It was like fucking gorillas, big bastards.
Wow.
And
well, it's kind of interesting. You don't really even think of too many guys Ikashibiing in the winter anymore. And that used to be a big thing in Hilo too. And you don't see that many guys actually sheebying hard at night anymore. Most of the guys are sheeby in the summer.
Right.
Makes you wonder how many fish get missed.
Probably a lot.
Yeah.
You get the Palo going down through the thermocline. You get down there that especially the big eyes. I caught let's see, November of 1980. I caught a 198-pound big eye in November, late November.
Yep.
Right outside Keio, right on 1,000.
Beautiful fish.
Oh man.
Well, all those big guys are being left behind there. No one's trying that.
Well, you got to be there to do it, right?
Well, that's it. Someone's got to try.
Yeah. I mean, it may take, I think, they're there.
It would take somebody with the right mindset to get back into totally focusing on that is the catch. You know what I mean? Like,
well, you'd have to have deep pot. You have to say, okay, this is like going to Vegas and you're going to gamble and I got this pound of money here. I'm going to go do it. Hit or miss. I'm going to do this and see.
But yeah, I mean, that's it, right? Like, so like we know that there's fish on like the 1,500, the 2,000,
right.
Like, but if you're not out there trying it, who's out there trying it? You know what I mean? Because,
and if they're doing it, they ain't saying shit. They're going. That's the other thing is the fishermen now have gotten real cagey. They've gone ninja.
Well, I think you kind of had to for
self-preservation, right?
Yeah, I mean, it's very competitive, and
the other thing, the other question is the private fads. I don't know how many or how disruptive they've been in the migratory patterns of the fish that traditionally used to be here. That's a good question, right?
These are good questions. I think one of the biggest questions we're really facing right now is how many of the fish just aren't even getting here because they're caught before they ever get here. Like I caught a tagged fish
Right.
on my last trip, which is the first tagged big eye I've ever caught. I've caught yellows before, and that
One of David Itano's fish, or I mean,
was it SPC tag, which is like oh man, it's Southern or the Secretant Pacific Community Tagging Program, and they've been doing it since 2006.
right.
And this is the second tag, and they've gotten 2 of them this year from Hawaii, around Hawaii. Well, both around the cross, to be honest, right? Mine had traveled 553 miles in a year, and like maybe it was 14 months, like a year and 2 months.
Where was it originally caught?
It was caught 554 miles southwest of the cross on a drifting fad. It was like, what is that? What did they say? It was like 12 north, 164 west, I guess.
Was it purposely drifting, or like it was a super center?
Yeah. So exactly. So what they've got is with the program, they work with the purse seiners.
Right.
Right. So the purse seiners let them fish around their fad because they know they're going to tag all of them. And also it just helps speed up the science that there's just a higher concentration of fish around these buoys.
Right.
And so they tag them with the idea being that, they're not going to disturb the fish. They're going to tag them, let them go. But that particular fad that the fish I tagged came off of, they actually dispersed it. So meaning that it was outside of their range that they would have chased it. So they hit that one on the way home. So they actually cut the floats off and sank it. So the fish that I caught wasn't actually around a fad or associated with a fad. But when I found it.
Right. So it was wandering, looking for another one.
So it was wandering. Right. Yeah. So, but the interesting thing about that fish, I did actually find another floater on my last trip, but it sucked. Like there wasn't much on it. I don't know. When we find the fads around the cross, for whatever reason, and I don't know if it's because the fish get there and they're like, see ya, because there's so much feed and life, but very rarely do they ever actually
hold anything.
Nah, they don't hold shit.
Well, the cross is the fad.
Right. That's the biggest fad around. Yeah. Right. So I think a lot of times when they get there, they actually kind of, my guess is they bolt, because if you found that same fad like inshore, unless it's just because it's a different current, but if you found that same fad inshore, you'd be filling your boat probably almost regardless of what size boat you have, So I don't think it's a surprise that other fad. I mean, I don't think that fish was associated with that fad that I found, because I caught it 2 days later, but I know for a fact the fad that the fish actually came off of was cut off, and sank. So it wasn't that. But so the question and has been for a long time, are a lot of the fish being cut off before they even ever get here?
I got theory to that. I mean, and I've watched the fishery. Even when I was in construction, even if I took a year off and went construction,
you're still paying attention.
I'm paying big time attention, right? Because it was, I didn't get a lot of love out of being a carpenter, right? I did build my own house, which was a plus, but
that's awesome.
But yeah, fishing has been my, that's been the lifeblood of my essence of whatever. I mean, somebody think about me. I'd rather think about me as being a fisherman than a carpenter, right? I mean, carpenter was.
I would call you a fisherman.
Carpentry was a means to an end. It wasn't something I wanted to be. Like I dream about building houses, right?
Right.
It's like I wanted to build my own house. Well, I did that.
Right.
Okay, let's move on.
But you dreamed of fish.
Yeah, and think about it, and so this whole thing about. And talking to the old timers and stuff, and Rusty Unger. I don't know if you remember Jimmy and Johnny Unger and those guys. And David Unger's grandfather, right? It's Bob Unger, right? And he used to tell Rusty and Johnny and those guys, "Where'd you go fishing today?" And they go, "Oh, we went out about 15 miles out." Blah. He says, "Why are you going way out there?" Well, because, he figures maybe you go farther out, you'll catch more fish. You know what I mean? Just, fishermen, right?
Right.
So if it's a little slow on the inside, let's go farther out, right? Or whatever. But he says, you're already Says, you are already in the middle of the ocean.
Yeah.
We're in Hawaii, right? You look at the
Right.
chart. We're already in the middle of the ocean, right? He said, the fish come to the island. You don't have to go out. They're coming to the island. They're coming to the, where are all the Apello and Akuli? They're up against the island, right? They're up on the flat. All the bait fish, all the food, they're coming to the island. The island, like you say, the cross is the fad.
Yep.
Fucking island's a fad.
Oh,
It used to be, right?
Yep.
Except for now, they got all these fences, not literal fences, but they
buoys.
Like you used to be able to get literally make a South Point run or make an Ono run. You would all invariably, if I stayed in Ono Lane all day, I invariably catch 3 or 4 tunas one in the lane.
Yep.
15, 20 pound size. Just as like a bycatch.
Right.
Because you're targeting Ono, right? You get this tuna. Okay, well, it's not a 100-pounder, but
were they always yellows?
A lot of times they were big eyes.
They were also big eyes.
Yeah,
Wow.
Yeah. You get a mix.
Yep.
Right. But the fish would come to the island, right? Now, with all this other stuff going on, it's well, they're not coming to the island because they get short circuited.
Here's a hard question that one that I
But see that stopped and you got to understand something. I wrote a letter. This is probably in the 90s, mid 90s or something, to Westpac, right? And that's a time when there was like 20 boats fishing out of Kona going to the cross. Joe Marks and everybody, right?
A lot of boats, yeah.
A lot of boats. Just like fucking it like excuse me. Fucking
Yeah, you don't have to stop swearing now.
Yeah, but but you know what I mean? They're banging it like an old whore, right? You know what I mean? It's like and my contention is I've seen, I've been out there. I know what it's like out there, and I fished out there.
Yep.
And there's a lot of juvenile fish, right? And
yes.
I said to Dave Itano one time, was in my kitchen drinking wine, sitting at the table with Joe and Dave and I. And I said, I think that's like the nursery out there or something, right? And he went, well, blah, blah, blah. He did a lot of tagging studies on the mountain, right?
Right. Yes.
But I said, in my letter, I said, I used to see making an Ono run, inshore, catching tunas, 15, 20 pounders, like commonplace. It was just like, if you're going to go Ono fishing from here to Middle Lee, you're going to catch them 3 or 4 of those
just about every day.
Just a bycatch. You got a tuna. It's not what you're looking for. You got a tuna. And smaller ones back in those days, you were looking to catch the Ono because the price would be better. You take that Ono to the Huggos and get $3.50 a pound back in the day, right?
Right.
You take a 20-pound big eye. They didn't want it.
Right.
They want to buy a 100-pounder, right? They want
a big fish.
Yeah.
Right.
So anyway, that's what I'm thinking. It's like the island was then it changed.
It's hard for me to say this, but I think at some point we're going to have to admit, as like, and this is everyone. This just isn't just commercial fishermen, but everybody's probably gotten either so good or almost too good at fishing, and or at least industry wise, in my opinion, because in a lot of cases we are just catching fish faster than reproductive rates, right? Mm-hmm. And for some reason, like industry boards and things like that don't want to talk about it. Like Westpac, they just gave the longline fleet more quota. There was just a 3-day meeting, and that's because they reached their quota every year, and so they gave them more. Now, do they get their quota every year because the fishery is so good, or do they get their quota every year because they've gotten so good at it? And there's no more permits, but there's bigger boats with more gear that hold more fish. Is there a time in the industry where we start talking about the fact that, yes, we all still want to make a living, but there's less fish in the ocean? Like, it seems taboo for some reason. Like,
it's geopolitical. The problem is, you see, all the fisheries in the United States that are under United States auspices are pretty much heavily regulated over somebody's looking over your shoulder doing this and that, and they don't get it right all the time. You've seen this on the East Coast as well as here, right? So you've seen it from two different perspectives in the Atlantic, right? You know, what they did with the cod and everything else, right? So the problem is, it's not so much, I mean, and pretty much the American fishermen will kowtow to the powers that be and try to do the best they can to comply. Now, there's always outliers that, just are renegades, and they'll,
every business.
Yeah, but
right.
Basically speaking, they'll probably, most of the time, most of the guys will try to adhere to the rules and regulations as much as possible, right?
Right.
Okay. The problem is, geopolitically, you got all these emerging countries, right? And some of them not even necessarily emerging, but you get a lot of like Korea and Japan and Taiwan and all these guys.
They don't give a fuck about resources at all.
They don't. They're just kill and grill, right? I mean, they kick the door jams out. They do whatever they want. They don't give a fuck, and they don't care about, we got this thing going. There's an ICAT, was it International Tuna Commission or something? Right?
Yeah.
It's like they'll go to the meeting. Yeah, and they'll go, oh yeah, and then go right back and nothing's changed.
Well, well, right. And one of the things is that you can have all the rules you want on paper, but if people don't comply and there's no enforcement, like even like Westpac, for example, we get all these treaties, but then these other countries, okay, we'll give them like their tonnage, right? They're out of quota. There's no enforcement, and if they violate those quotas, we don't do anything. There's no punishment from us, right? So, and that fucking product a lot of times ends up right back in our country,
right?
So there's almost no incentive for a lot of these places to comply because there is no enforcement, and then there's no repercussion from other places like us.
And then the politicians or whoever's in charge don't have the fortitude to say this fish cannot enter our country.
Well, it's even worse than that. Did you know that we have had a law that Westpac has pushed back 8 fucking times, that already on the books, that every bit of seafood that's imported, okay, is supposed to comply with the same regulations as a U.S. caught fish to make it an even playing field.
Yeah.
Right. So as far as like threatened species, marine mammals, all the fish coming in is supposed to comply. And we all know it doesn't. They're supposed to have the same things.
Right.
But our government keeps giving them extensions, 2 years, 1 year, like 1 year. A lot of people don't know this. What I have not been able to figure out about this, okay, who is getting the kickback? Who is getting the money out of this? Because if those people are really supposed to be looking out for the fishermen and our resources' best interest, wouldn't the first thing you would do is enforce the imports that are, first of all, imports drive our whole market, right? They're what cripples the price. They're like everything, no matter what anyone thinks, the whole price is based around import. Who's getting the kickback? Like there has to be a kickback. Who keeps extending it? Like I can't believe there isn't like a bigger cry. And maybe it's because people don't know, but like somebody's getting money.
Well, the problem is
somebody's getting money. Will.
The problem is a fisherman, and it's been this way for a long, long time. The fishermen are too busy. They're so under the gun. They got to go out and catch more fish. And they got to get ready. They got to fix the boat. They don't have time to really become activated, like social activists. Like a lot of these, like you see school teachers, right? They like some agenda, whatever it is, right? And they've got the extra time, and they'll take the time to go down and make a stink. I'm just using them as a mundane example, right? But fishermen, they're so busy, they got to get back out there because they're under the gun because they got a boat payment coming up or something, They don't have time to go down there and rattle the cage. I mean, I know, like in some places they did, like in some of the guys organized in Alaska and some of the up where you're from, right? Some of these lobster guys, and they went down and.
Well, you know what the problem is with us is we compete with third world labor. Right. That's the bottom line. You know, a kilo of ahi in Indonesia right now is half a cent. Try competing with that. Half a cent. One of the guys that works on my boat, he owns a fishing boat.
Right.
And he's got a crew. They haven't gone fishing forever. He still pays them. He's got 3 guys on. They can't even afford to untie it, but he has to keep paying those guys salary every month. That's like the way they do it down there. He pays the guys like his salary that he gets from me. Like if
Right.
let's say we don't fish, okay? Let's say we don't fish. He's actually losing money every month being here because just his salary alone, he depends on the fishing bonus. Just his salary alone is not enough to cover his crew that he's currently got tied up, hoping that things are going to turn around again right now. So he actually makes
Why
more
is it so cheap there?
because there's no exportation because of all the COVID stuff that's going on right now. So everything, the whole infrastructure has been shut down, and a lot of the stuff that was in place, so like the supply line, is gone now because they've been shut down for so long.
You mean Kowalski's going to run out of gas?
What's that?
Kowalski's going to run out of gas?
I don't know who that is. Is that
That's the guy who's gassing all the fish, Bill Kowalski.
I don't. Carbon monoxide fish.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah. I thought you were talking about the. No. So I mean, this is a total side note, but like one of the things in Indonesia, right? Their fuel is there's 2 tiers of fuel, or at least 2. Okay, and so like the general populace fuel, like for our cars, is subsidized, but business like fuel isn't. So like he could go fill up his motorcycle and it's cheap, but to go try and fill up his boat right now, the price is insane. Like it's more expensive. Like it's pennies on the dollar to fill up his moped, right?
Right.
But the fuel's more expensive at home for his boat than it is like here. So that's one of the things he's facing too. So it's kind of crazy to think about it, but you know, there's a lot of problems with fisheries. There's no doubt. Like it's like it's something I struggle with all the time. Like on one hand, I love my foreign crew. And on the other hand, I'll tell everybody right now, and I tell that to them, I'm not sure they should be here. You know, like, but like the way the laws have been set up, they're here now. And so for me to go fishing all the time, I need them. Like if I want to go fishing enough to fulfill my desire to go fishing, I need them. I tried to do it without them. Right. I got my first, I got my new boat, and I said, you know what? I'm going to make an honest go of going like I did in the beginning without foreign labor,
local help,
with local help, you know, like full crew, you know, share and everything. And I just couldn't do it. I couldn't go enough. I just couldn't go enough. I was just tied up all the time. And not that I blame people, like commercial fishing's not for everybody, especially like what I do. It's like being gone 5 to 7 days all the time.
Your crew has to be young and unattached.
Yes. Yeah. Yeah. Or like in the Indonesian's case, it's, you know, coming to work for me is like a high paying job. It's like, you know, I don't know. I think,
it's like some kid going from high school right into the oil fields or something, right? I mean, comparatively,
right?
You know, get some kid out of high school and he goes up to North Dakota and he's making $110,000 a year. You know, he barely made it out of high school, right?
Right.
And the Indonesian guy come here and make money would be like equivalent of being a millionaire back there.
Oh, man. I mean, those guys are all like Sudi, who's been with me for over 10 years. I mean, I don't really want to talk about his finances, but he's not far out from retiring. He's only a year older than me. And I'm like talking about retiring forever. You know, he's been doing it for like a little over a decade. So,
but retiring is where his economic system works for him.
Correct.
Now, he couldn't retire here.
You couldn't retire here. No. But you know, like, man, if you pay, for example, like an Indonesian guy gets 50 grand a year, that's a ton of money for them. Right. If they take home, well, let's say even take home 40 grand. That's so much money compared to the like median middle class of being like $3,500, you know, for a year. $3,500 for like a year is median middle class down there. So if you come here and make 40 grand, you're huge,
right?
You know, but 40 grand
for a rock star.
Yeah, you're a rock star, but you come here and make 40, 50, 60 grand as a deckhand in a year here, it's not going anywhere near as far. I mean, fuck, $62,000 is considered what the hell they call it here?
Cost. Yeah, I know what you mean.
It's like $62,000 in Hawaii is
median income.
or poverty line. The poverty line in the U.S. for like someone with, or for Hawaii for someone with a kid is like 62 grand. So like, you know, even on like some of the, except for some huge outlier years,
Right.
most deckhands like are making just at poverty line, right? So I don't know. That's the hard thing. Like maybe if you're living at your parents' house or something,
right?
You know, 50 grand. But man, it doesn't like it. Like, you know, Hawaii is so expensive to live in.
Well, I mean, it's not just here, because it's relative. I mean, if you went to Oklahoma City, yeah, you might be able to get a double wide somewhere out in the sticks, 20 miles outside of town or something for whatever. But it's generational. I think the younger generation, a lot of them have to double up with their parents because, first of all, the housing's not available at, you know, I mean,
Totally
reasonable housing is not available.
No.
I mean, you want to pay.
I mean, look at the fucking housing market out here right now. It's crazy, right? And who like nobody with a baseline job right now
Can buy a house.
can buy a house in Hawaii.
No.
And I think it's pretty true in New England too, because
you got 4 families that couldn't buy a house.
Yeah,
together if they made a hui and put all the money together.
I know. I mean, I don't know what that looks like in the future. Like, I mean, does the whole American dream kind of change owning your own house or what? But like, yeah, I don't know, man. I mean, we're kind of getting off subject here, but not really, because it's the same subject that everybody's facing everywhere.
Back to the geopolitical thing with fishing and how the economics, which drives what we do and what decisions we make, whether you're going to go fishing or not go fishing,
right,
or what price you're going to get paid for your fish when you bring them in.
Well, and a lot of this comes back to consumer. All right, so right off the bat, and I know like some places have tried it, like Sack and Save. Mm-hmm. Okay, so you've got a local product, a local ahi next to a frozen product. Okay, one's $24.99 a pound, one's $10.99 a pound. The average consumer does not care enough about the feel-good story to pay that additional money.
Right.
As heartbreaking as that is for someone who's passionate and loves it and like speaks why you should be buying a local fish, mathematically it is proven over and over and over again that the consumer will keep purchasing the cheaper product. Like, I wish that wasn't the case, but it is, and so,
well, not every consumer, but the large portion of them,
the mass majority. That's the problem, that's one of the huge problems is there's a price point. I mean,
right.
I know this sounds conflicted, but one thing I've always said, and I believe that to this day, is that I think we should probably eat less fish. It should cost more money. I think we should eat less fish. It should cost more money and be more appreciated. We've gotten to the point where we expect a wild-caught product to be on the shelf every day for relatively cheap. Like, it's something that you can farm raise and regulate, and you can't, like, they have different cyclic trends. They move. I think the reality is, for sustainability in the future, is that fish should be consumed less and it should be appreciated more. That's, not everyone has my point on it, but like, I mean, I think that's what really would be.
Well, it'd be like the golden dynamic, but doesn't necessarily equate to reality. I mean, being able to be a reality.
No.
So you come to the point where fish, I mean, they're growing fake meat now. Science has learned through some sort of DNA. I saw it on the news.
I know. I've seen it too.
They grow in meat from basically a bunch of amoebas or something in a petri dish. Actually growing fake beef, right?
I know.
I've seen it. It just grows like a blob or something, and then you slice it off, and here's your steak.
Right.
I don't know how it works or what it tastes like, but I'm a little leery about eating that. I'd rather eat less of everything than eat that.
Right.
Personally.
Right.
It's kind of spooky, right? I mean, this guy invents this shit in a pit Petri dish, and next thing you know, it's imitation beef.
Oh,
It's not
yeah.
even plant-based. It's actually real. It's like, if you got a bunch of germs and put it in, it grows, how germs grow. And, it's kind of like that, except for they're growing flesh.
Yeah.
They're growing flesh in the laboratory and you're going to eat it. I don't know about all this.
Well, I mean,
I'd rather eat farm fish than eat that shit.
oh, no. Duh.
And I work at a fish farm now. How's that?
What? Wait. Oh, yeah, that's right. Man, that's
just part-time.
Part-time.
I don't have anything to do with growing the fish.
What do you actually do at the fish farm?
Well, I put 2 pipes together if I need some wire run, or if I need a trench dug, or nail 2 boards together. Just kind of like a glorified maintenance guy, I was called a hardware specialist when we got all our those barge. I don't know if the barge we had out here with a container on it.
No, yeah, the controversial fad.
Well, whatever. And
yeah.
Anyway, they had these containers on there, which has a generator and a fish hopper and a this and that and all kinds of electronics and stuff, to keep the barge and the cage going, compressor air. They can raise and lower the cage and everything. So Sean and I actually put 8 of those containers together and we shipped them off. That's how I got the job with Sean.
Sean Palmer, yeah.
Yeah. Anyway, so Sean and he got me the job. He knew that one of the guys anyway. And so we actually put all the equipment and installed all the generators and the mixing bowls and the pumps and everything and all the wiring and all that stuff and the conduits and all that for the guts of those containers, because they have what they call a C container and a E. Basically, one container is where they have the power resource of 2 redundancy of two generators, 2 of this, and the other one is a feed container that actually has pumps that bring the feed into pump and it pumps it out to the cage where the fish are living, right?
Wow.
It's all remote. You can do it all remote control through computers and stuff. You could be in a cafe in Paris, France, and boot up the deal and feed the fish.
And feed your fish
on your laptop.
Huh.
I mean, if they wanted to.
What are your thoughts on fish farming, having come from a fishing background?
I kind of followed what was happening up in Canada and British Columbia and all that with the salmon farms.
Yeah.
And they're stuck in some fjord where the flushing, they weren't the area wasn't flushed enough. So they had all kinds of parasites and all kinds of degradation of the water and stuff like that. You get 250,000 fish living in a small area and they're all taking a dump. And, even though with the tides are pretty radical up there, but still it's not enough because they never really get out of the fjord, right?
Right.
Dump all this shit on the bottom of the fjord and the tide goes out and brings it back in.
Right.
Yeah. Twice a day for 365 days a year, right? It did create some problems, right? But what we're doing, I've sort of changed my outlook a little bit because this concept of guys I work for is offshore.
Okay.
So they don't have that degradation of the environment. Number one, they don't have the infestation of parasites and stuff because of the location and their system, how they do their deal, right? And so I worked there for a year before I ate in one of those kenpachi that we were growing. And when I finally had one, I said, damn, this is good.
Oh, yeah?
Oh, it was good. I mean,
do the ones from the offshore farm taste different than the ones in the pens inshore?
I don't know because I haven't eaten ones. I've only eaten our product.
You
I've
only
never
had
their product.
Oh, you've only had the offshore ones. Yeah. Okay. Gotcha. Huh.
I asked one of my coworkers, it's a guy who works on, we have what we call the offshore team.
Yep.
That are divers and they actually deal with the cage and all that shit.
Yeah.
And I asked one of them the other day, I said, this very same question, because I said, I've never eaten anything but our product, right? And I love our product.
Yep.
So is there much difference? He says, the only difference is the ones inshore seem to have less fat content. And I said, does that have something to do with the temperature or something? He said, he thinks it's the feed cycle. Because he says we were feeding ours a little more feed than they were feeding it. I don't know if that's proprietary. Maybe I'm saying too much. Maybe it's
No.
proprietary information
I don't know.
or something, right?
I don't know. I was just curious more
Spilling
about
the beans, but anyway.
I mean, I was wondering more about the flavor profile, but I mean, fat. I mean, if there's
our
fat,
product, it's so good. I just was astounded when I first ate it. I don't believe this. I was eating sashimi.
Yeah,
it's like, whew, this is like really good stuff.
Isn't it funny when you think something a certain way for so long, and then you experience something where it kind of makes you change your thoughts on things? It's. I'm gonna be honest. My verdict is still out on that fish farm just because of the Steno problem and stuff. But from a fisherman's standpoint, the environmental, like to a fisherman, what's changed? But as opposed to like
it's just another fad, and you got to put it when any fad, you got to put up with the Stenos.
Pretty much. Yeah.
Sooner or later, they'll give you a day off now and then. But on the other hand, too, is if you're not catching rats, the Steno's not going to grab a 150-pound eye.
No,
I've never seen that happen.
No,
I think the breaking point's around 40 pounds. And I've never seen one, they get 10, 15, 18 pounders, but I've never seen one grab a 60, 70 pounder.
No. Not that there's a whole lot of Ikashibi fleet left, but some of the guys who fish Ikashibi have a huge disdain for where that one was located.
It's right in the lane, right?
It's right in the lane. Yeah. So I don't know. I can see it from both sides.
It's amazing. There's no rhyme or reason. But if you sit on 1,000, you go to 1,000, it's like, how do the fish know it's 1,000?
Well, they don't, right?
But I mean, you go to 1,000 and boom.
Right. Well, for whatever reason, that depth line seems to work.
Right.
I know. It's crazy. It's crazy how consistent that is on certain things too. Like there doesn't seem like there should be a reason why it works, but it does. So
one night I was back in the 80s, early 80s, 83, 4, something like that. And on the way out, I caught a 605-pound marlin by myself. I got it up and it flagged another guy down. They jumped on my boat. They were on a big radin, about a 30-foot radin. They jumped on my boat and helped me drag it onto my boat. This is when I had my 26-foot dory. I took it in and I called. The only guy I could get to come get was Jack Prettyman when he had his fish house up in Kineleo.
Okay.
He came and picked it up, even though he knew I was going to sell it to Jerry. Right? That's how good a guy he was. He said, "I'll come get it for you." And he came, got it, put it in his thing, and I don't know how. Somehow he got it. Somehow he was going to go down there anyway. Anyway, he actually delivered it to Volcano Isle for me the next day. Because we were friends. He just whatever.
Right, helping you out.
So I didn't get out. I was kind of like, it was right before sunset when this happened. By the time I got back out, I was kind of tired dealing with this 600-pound marlin, right? And it was Kailua Pier. He picked it up at Kailua Pier. Anyway, so I said, screw it. I'm just going to go out to the 1,000 right in front of Kaiwi, which is only like 2.5, 3 miles out. It's not even that far out, right? Because I had caught broadbill right in there. And so I set the lines out and everything, and I worked it for an hour or two, and I was really tired. I went in my little cuddy cabin in there and just went to sleep, right? Okay. Next thing I wake up, it's like maybe 40 minutes before dawn, right?
That's a pretty good nap.
I'm in 200 fathoms in front of Kaholi Light, and I've got 60-pound big eyes. I got 2 on, get them up, send them back down, get 2 more on. I got 6 at just first light over the ridge.
The gray lift
at 200 fathoms, big eyes.
Yep.
In tight like that far in tight. But how I know, they could have been swimming around the boat all night.
Right.
I don't know. Yeah, but like normally that's something you'd see offshore somewhere, right?
Right.
I mean,
well, it's like you said, though. I mean, who's trying there?
Yeah.
Nobody's trying, right?
Well, I mean, it's just what it is.
Yeah.
And that was the summertime too. I mean, that was normally I used to always associate, unless you were on a log or something, big eyes with being more of a wintertime fish.
Yep.
We used to get every once in a while in Kona, there'd be a guy out there trolling along, his charter boat or something, right? And like this time of year,
Get covered up.
just get covered up, everything.
Yeah.
And you know how it is. If
Yep.
you got danglers. If you had 20 lures out there, they all go off.
Right.
Right. But every lure in the thing, boom. You come in, he's like, whoa, man, holy shit, I had a blind strike 6 at a time or whatever, 5 at a time or whatever.
Right, right.
You know? It seems like they're always.
It seems like it's been a while.
I haven't heard that story in quite a while.
Yeah.
But they all seem to be, when you get, it's all like between 80 and 100 pounds.
Usually bigger ones, yeah.
Yeah, 80 and 100 pounds, you know.
Yep. Yeah, well, the rogue ones we get trolling like in the middle of nowhere, those are always the bigger ones.
Yeah.
Right. Those are like, when you blast off a couple 140s or
Right,
something,
yeah,
they're
right.
like, where the hell did those come from?
Right.
They're always like a bigger pack. Yeah.
Well,
for
the
sure.
thing that if you scientists say that they stay down and they got to come up to warm up their muscles.
Yep.
So they're down at 1,200 feet. And every 2 or 3 times, 4 times, whatever the cycle is, they got to come up and warm their muscle tissue up. That's why they come up in a thermocline.
Right.
And when they come up, and if you coming by, they come up, they'll feed. They're up in the upper thermocline. There's no law that says they can't eat.
Oh, yeah.
in warmer water, right?
Right.
So if you just happen to be, when they come up and you happen to be going by and you got 6 jet heads out, all 6 of them are going to go off, right?
Right. Well, a number I see repeated quite a bit is that big eyes only spend 7 to 11% of their life in like the upper water column,
Right.
if across their whole lifetime. So when you get them trolling at all, it's kind of neat. It's a pretty short window, So
Well, the juveniles, I think the juvenile guys that's why you get so many juveniles on the cross, right? I mean, the big eyes,
Yeah.
Because I don't think they're quite adapt to going.
Well, it's a full lifetime we're talking about.
Yeah,
It's
I
across a
understand.
full lifetime.
No,
Yeah.
and I'm saying I think the juveniles spend more time in the upper waters. You look at the
Around structure too, like anything like that. Yeah, they're like bigger fish as they get bigger have a tendency. Like big guys are really kind of neat. Like so they get to, except for like on rare occasion, for the most part, like they break up eventually as they get bigger. They become like lone wolves. So like they go into like packs of like 7 or 8. A lot of times, except there are rare occasions where you get schools of big ones, but most of the time when you find bigger ones, they're just mixed in.
Do you think that like that pack mentality when they're like under a dozen or something in a deal that's what's left of that particular brood stock over the years through attrition?
No, I think they break off like wolf packs. I think they get to a certain size and then they kind of break off because the bigger ones kind of become their own little deal. Part of that probably has to do with sexual maturity too. Like big eyes go sexually mature a lot later than say like a yellowfin,
Oh, yeah.
So I think that has to do with it. I would have guessed too, like at a certain point, big eyes eat small big eyes. So they might not be that fucking welcome at a certain point either. You know what I mean? Like they probably get to a certain size where like a little big eye doesn't want to see a big eye.
Right.
That probably is part of it as well, I would think, So, Will, I just have to ask you one more question. Sure. I mean, I'm really appreciating, we're at 2 hours and 30 minutes right now. And oh man, yeah. Well, it's because you're a great subject matter. You got so many good stories, but one story that fascinated me last time that I really was hoping you would tell. And because I am a big fan of Hunter S. Thompson and The Curse of Lono. And I was introduced to that book later on, but some of the the tales of Kona and stuff are awesome. And I know you were around during that time period.
Right, I was.
And if you could just tell the people at home about like your experiences during that time and just, I knew you had a follow-up story too with a friend there. I would love for you to share that story if you don't mind.
Well, Hunter S. Thompson, if those who don't know, was an American author and correspondent. He actually would write for magazines, Rolling Stone, and a few other ones, a lot of other ones actually. And he wrote some books. And if you looked at him, you wouldn't know he was crazy. He looked like an accountant. He was like lean, angular guy, short hair, horn-rimmed glasses. He looked like a CPA. And he was a crazy, very talented, very intelligent, but just wild crazy. He loved drugs, cocaine, LSD, pills, whatever you had. What do you got? He'll do it all, right? Drink, alcohol. I mean, he was just nuts. I mean, and I'm not. I'm going to disparage the poor man. He's no longer with us, right?
Right.
But he was. I mean, and I was kind of a fan of his. Just
But he's a very
because-
good author.
Oh yeah,
Great writer.
That expression, gonzo journalism. They coined that about him,
Right.
because his style of writing was just like machine gun, rat-a-tat-tat. You know, he just, you know, his dialogue is, you know,
It's amazing.
it's just go, right? You know, and you have to kind of keep up. You know what I mean? You read it. You know, he's like, can I keep up with this guy, right? And but he came here in, oh God, what year was it? In the early 80s.
So 1984 marathon, does that sound right? Or
Well,
86 or something?
No, I think it was.
I'm trying to think from the book.
It was actually before that. I think it was like he came. One of these magazines paid him to go cover the Honolulu Marathon.
Right. Yes. Yeah.
So he had a buddy named Stedman. I forget his first name, John Stedman, I think, who was an artist, and he did a lot of illustrations for some of Hunter S. Thompson's books. So they came together, right? And Stedman was going to do the illustrations for the article, and Hunter was going to cover the article and write the article. They covered, and as soon as the thing was over, they came to Kona. They heard about Kona, and they came to Kona. And they rented this, they called it a compound. In the book Curse of Lona, he calls it the compound.
Right.
And if you go down Lehigh Drive, if you go south, just past Magic Sands, there's a little bay. It's right adjacent to Lehigh Drive, and then you'll see some condos.
Yeah, right there, mile marker 4.
They look like Polynesian roofs. You know, they got a 2-story condos, little brown buildings that have the Polynesian style roof. Just beyond that is the old Peacock Estate, and there was 2 houses on that and a carriage house, and the 2 houses were mirror images of each other. He rented one of those, the vacation rental. My friend Stan and his wife Mary Ann were the caretakers of that property, right? And in the book, Curse of Lono, he talks about the sleazy caretaker and his wife. Anyway, that was Stan. Anyhow, but see, while he was over here, he wanted to go fishing.
Okay.
Yeah. So he started fishing with a couple of guys, and he fished with Jeff Fay on the Humdinger and a couple other guys, and another guy named oh God, what's the other guy's name? I know him. It's Steve Kaiser.
Steve Kaiser.
Not Steve Kaiser. One had the Medusa. There was another Kaiser that had an old Ravovich, but like a 28-foot or 30-foot Ravovich on the other side of the harbor. There's a Steve Kaiser that was a diver and owned the Medusa, right?
Okay.
But this other Steve Kaiser was across there, and he fished with that on that boat, and that boat was called, what the hell was that? Anyway, so he went to the South Point trip on that boat, and he used to fish with Jeff Fay on the Humdinger. And at that time, periodically, I would now and then I crew for my friend who had a boat called 31 Bertram called the Desperado, and my friend's name was Joe Augustine. He had the boat parked. His slip was right next to the Humdinger, right? So Hunter S. Thompson used to come down in the morning, jump on the boat, and there's a tackle station on the back of the Humdinger, right between the salon and the deck, you know.
Yeah.
And he'd open the top drawer and empty this baggie in there, not a baggie, but like a brown bag, you know,
Like a medical bag or something.
No, just like you went to Longs or something. They give you a bag, not a big KTA bag, but you know. And he'd empty it out into the top drawer, and he announced to the world, he said, "The drugs are in the top drawer, boys. Help yourself," right?
Yeah.
You know, he had cocaine and pills and weed and whatever, right? You know, and they go fishing, right? And then back in the day, that's before Huggos on the Rocks, they had the other Huggos. I mean, the Huggos before it got Huggos, the regular Huggos,
right,
now got gentrified, and it was a lot of contractors and fishermen would go in there in the afternoon.
Gentrified. What a great way to put it.
Yeah, well, that's what it is now, right? I mean, but back if you went there at 5 o'clock or 6 o'clock in the afternoon, back in those days, half the people in there were fishermen or contractors, you know. and everybody's getting all jammed up and everything. So,
Yeah.
but we go in there, sit down, and we're sitting at the table, and Hunter and the rest of those guys are in the very next table, right? And they had these round tables with these, I don't know, like chairs like this anyway. And they're drinking slammers. Now, slammers, you got like a tumbler, like a short tumbler like that.
Yep.
And you put a couple shots of tequila in there and an ounce of club soda.
Okay.
Put your hand over it and slam it on the table as hard as you could, and it would fuzz up, and you got to drink it all before the fuzz goes down. It's called a slammer.
Huh.
And they're drinking slammer after slammer. I mean, these guys are going around the table, boom, 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 And Hunter Thompson's so lit up. He's got 2 cigarettes going at one time. He's like, I mean, totally off the charts, man.
Right.
So, I mean, this is like, they've been going at it all day. Who knows how much blow he did and everything else he did. And to reach that point in the afternoon where they're drinking slammers, and he's still moving, right?
Right.
And so in that book is sort of an expose about Kona and all the crazy stuff that went on. And
that book makes me laugh because I wish I hadn't been exposed to it until I'd actually lived here for a long time. And I was laughing because so much of it is like painfully accurate on some stuff. Like you're kind of like, if you didn't actually live here, you'd think some of it was bullshit. You know what I mean?
No, I'm not embellishing the story one iota. Believe me, not one iota. And funny thing, when he finally left Kona, right?
Yeah.
Now, after he left is when he wrote the book Curse of Lono, right? But when he actually left, and he left the compound and moved on, went up and back to LA. Well, who knows where he went? New York, LA. I don't know where he went.
Right.
Anyway, I get a call from Stan, who's a friend of mine. He says, "Get your ass over here." And he goes, "Why?" He says, "Well, you should see what Hunter left us." What do you mean? I go over. So I go over there, and his eyes are all like this. It's like it's like 10 o'clock in the morning. He's like, yeah. So what happened? He says, "Well, Marion went to clean the house, right? And Hunter never used the kitchen."
Okay.
Because he would go out, he go to Kona Inn to eat.
Every night.
Just about every night.
Yeah.
And he became friends with Marty and Steve Fossinello, those guys that owned Kona Inn and stuff. He partied with those guys and all that shit. Anyway, so he says, he says, she was cleaning the kitchen, and she knew they never used the kitchen, but she's looking, there was a wall oven.
Yep.
So he looked in the wall oven, and there's a plate, right? And it was like an ounce of Coke just piled in on his dinner plate.
Oh God.
And they said, "Come on over, good time, and just look at this, 10 o'clock in the morning, they're doing lines, right?"
Oh man.
Oh, yeah, that's nuts. But I subsequently I read a couple other things that he wrote, and I read a book, not an autobiography, but a biography of Hunter, and the biography is called Hunter.
Yep.
For anybody's interested out there. And it was written by one of his ex-girlfriends that knew the guy really well, right? And she wrote an expose on a lot of his life, and she knew a lot of background. She knew his brother and everything, and blah, blah, blah. And she wrote stories, and she actually went and interviewed people that rubbed elbows with him or knew him, had business dealings with him, or, other writers or people, this, that, and the other thing. And all these people had stories about their experience with Hunter. And I had this book, and the book is called Hunter.
Okay.
And I had this book, and I could only read a chapter a night because his exploits would wear me out.
Yeah.
I mean, because I get involved. When I read, I get involved, and I
Right.
go, I get like, I'm almost living it,
Right.
But I could only take a chapter a night because I go, this guy wears me out.
Right.
It's like doing too much. I can't even picture myself doing the crap he's doing, right? And one of the excerpts from that book was Rolling Stone or somebody sent him to Vietnam during the last, couple of years of Vietnam deal.
Right.
And he was going to do his stint as a war correspondent, right? So he's in some hotel in Saigon or something, right? And he's drinking at the bar, and he meets these other war correspondents, like bona fide war correspondents, real guys, not Hunter Thompson, right?
Right.
They knew who he was. They knew his reputation.
Right.
And he says, yeah, I want to go out with you guys in the morning. And they said, well, okay, Hunter, here's the deal. You be down here at 6 o'clock in the morning and be ready to go. If you're not here at 6, we're leaving without you. We're going to go out into the hinterland where they're actually shooting, right?
Okay.
So they're down there about 5 minutes to 6. Well, this guy's not going to show up, right? He's not going to come down. Here he comes. He's got an Aloha shirt on, shorts, Bermuda shorts, flip-flops. He's got this little hat on, and he always smoked a cigarette with a cigarette holder.
Okay.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And he's always like, and he's dragging a cooler full of beer, iced down beer. And he's going out to do war correspondence. They're going out in the battlefield.
Right.
Some rice paddy or something. And he's acting like he's going on a picnic. You know what I mean? They said, oh, look at this guy. Anyway, they take him out there, right? And they get out there, and there's a firefight erupts and everything, and everybody's hunkered down, and they're shooting back and forth and everything. And he gets up and starts walking around like he's a director in a movie. It's like Cecil B. DeMille making a war movie or something. He's walking around, smoking his cigarette, like observing everything, like he's totally oblivious that there's fucking bullets flying around, right? And he said it was the damnedest thing they've ever seen, and he didn't get shot, nothing. He just with an Aloha shirt, a loud pink and blue and yellow Aloha shirt, like no more camouflage. And he was sticking out like a parrot, right? And he got away with it.
Unreal.
Yeah. And the other one, the other quick one that I'll never forget reading it. So another guy was telling, George McGovern that ran for president.
Yep.
Remember? I don't, maybe not remember him, but anyway.
I know who he is. Yeah.
Anyway, he ran for president, right? So they had this, he went to some hotel where they're having the Democratic convention.
Okay.
And McGovern was there. So he somehow got and called the PR guy for McGovern, said, I would like to have an interview with McGovern, right? And I make an article.
Yep.
So he said, okay. Hunter says, can you meet us for dinner in the dining room of the hotel at 6 o'clock or something, right? So he goes down and he sits down and shakes his hand and everything. So it's the PR guy from McGovern and Hunter, 3 of them at the table. He says, the waiter comes up. He says, would you gentlemen like a drink before dinner? And Hunter says, I want a scotch and water, a margarita, and 2 bottles of some kind of beer. I forget what kind. 2 bottles of Heineken or something.
Yeah.
And he says, sir, he says, that's 4 drinks. He says, there's only 3 at the table. He says, that's for me. I don't know what these other motherfuckers are drinking. I mean, it's McGovern, the presidential candidate. He calls him a motherfucker.
Yeah.
I thought it was like, this is nuts. And George McGovern, actually, that was his story of Hunter Thompson, told to the gal that wrote the book.
Amazing.
McGovern recounted that actually happened. That's how a wild man he was.
National treasure on some levels, huh?
Well, I mean, sort of the seedy side of our culture. I mean,
yeah.
I mean, it's whatever.
Yeah. Amazing, man. Amazing.
You wouldn't want your daughter to get hooked up with him, right? I mean,
fuck no. Oh, fuck no. Man, you have had an amazing career here on the Kona Coast, and you have told us some amazing stories. Are there any stories before you go that you'd like to share? Like anything that really is really important that gets passed along, something that you recall from your life or something that happened in your fishing career that a memory or a story you want to make sure that it doesn't get lost to time? There any story like that you want to share?
There's a lot of stories. I just, I got, without getting too crazy, I've got a firm belief that I've always had somebody watching over me, it's like some supernatural, like an angel or something, whatever. And I was at South Point one time by myself, Ikashibi fishing off the point. I mean, like 4 miles off the point by myself. And I don't know, sometime around maybe 11, I decided I needed to get some sleep. I've been up all day. I needed to get at least 3 hours sleep or something. So I set my little alarm, like for 4 a.m. to get the morning rush. I make up, make sure I got fresh baits and start hammering the Apollo again and all that, right? And so somewhere into the evening, I went in the cabin, man. I was out, man. I was like, how you get to deep sleep. And I had this, this thing, get up, get out on deck. I'm alone on the boat, right? Get out on deck. What the heck? And I climb out on the deck. I'm looking around and I look up, and in front of me, there's a red and a green light coming at me, but it's up high. It's up
big,
20 feet up with a friggin' freighter. I mean, coming dead ass for me. And I'm in a 26-foot wooden boat. Not much of a radar target. You know what I mean?
Right. Totally.
And I look at this, and it was coming, and it was cooking along pretty good,
Right.
And so I started my engine and started tripping my chute in reverse. Trip the chute and get it in the boat, get everything up and I got everything up and got out of the way and went off to the side, and that thing passed me about 60, 70 yards.
Wow.
That's how close it was. And I got somebody looking at, if I slept through that, that thing.
You wouldn't have woken up for that one.
And I know from my time on that Victory ship that ain't nobody watching. They're not gonna see me.
Right.
They won't even hear me.
Right.
That 500-foot ship doing 20 knots would ground me up to like toothpicks, or you know what I mean? It would they wouldn't even know.
Yeah.
Hey boss, I think we hit something. It must be a log out there.
Would you even know? You think they'd even feel it at all? I mean, they set off percussion grenades around the fucking ship.
Well,
right?
500, 600-foot ship doing 20 knots.
Doesn't even feel it.
I mean, they probably hit logs all the time. They probably hit logs out of the Pacific Northwest that are 6 feet in diameter, and they don't even know about it.
Yeah, all the time. I've seen. You ever seen any of those?
Probably get rolled back by the prop, and those props just snap them in half like rotten wood.
Have you ever seen those pictures of when a ship comes in with a bulbous bow and they've got a dead whale on the front of the ship? And
I've
they
never
didn't.
seen
And
that,
if you Google it, they're if you Google dead whale ship, there's pictures on the internet of whales that get hit by these freighters and they don't even know they have it, and they've got a fucking whale stuck up on the bulbous bow of the ship. So yeah, they're not feeling you on your boat. No,
they chewed me up and spit me out.
Yeah.
No. That was that got my attention, Ooh. Oh, anyway,
that's a pretty crazy story, man.
Yeah.
Glad you're here today.
I'm glad I lived through it.
Yeah, me too. Me too, man.
You think about it. The first time I went to South Point on my skiff, I had a 70 horsepower Johnson, right?
Yep.
I upgraded from the 50 I originally had. No kicker. And I had an old, I don't know, it came with the boat, an old CB radio with 3 stations on it, 3 channels. And I launched my boat at night at KO Bay, ran down the middle of the Lee, stopped the boat, laid down on the bottom of the boat, waited for the crack of dawn, got up and had a thermos full of coffee and a peanut butter sandwich, and started trolling from middle of the Lee to South Point. Made the owner run all the way to South Point, right? And then went off the point out because the water was kind of good. It wasn't totally flat, but it was, and I was out off the point. And there's a pinnacle 4 miles out. If you see the underwater chart,
yep,
the South Point.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
That peninsula or whatever underwater peninsula goes out 4 miles,
right,
before the tip of it starts dropping off 80, 90, 120. Anyway, I was out there in a boat with no backup motor, just by myself. Anything can happen. If that motor had quit, aloha, gone. I think so. So at one period of my life when I was so crazy about fishing, a common sense reality of being a prudent mariner or being wise about what you're doing, that was out the window, man. I want to catch some fish. I mean, that was a paramount thing, I didn't give a shit. You know, I didn't think about what would happen, this and that, what could happen. I look back sometimes in the evening, I start thinking about those old days and looking back and going like, holy shit, I was out on a limb, man. Anything could have happened. Somehow it didn't.
Man, yeah, anything for fish, right?
That was the primary objective. All other considerations didn't think about what could happen.
Any regrets?
The one that got away.
Oh, do you have one that got away?
They got plenty. They all got plenty of them.
Oh, yeah.
Some of the two-legged ones and some of those fishy ones.
Yeah. I think we all got a few of those on land and offshore. Yeah.
Well, it's all good.
Yeah. Would you have done it any different way if you could do it again?
Oh, there's some women I wouldn't even talk to now. Oh no! Fuck. Run as fast as you can.
Oh shit! Well, I was talking about the
fish. Yeah,
I was talking about the fish, but I can relate to that as well. Yeah. Knowing what you know now. Yeah. Oh God! You ever think about how many more fish you'd catch if you never had a penis? I think about that sometimes. Think of if you didn't have that penis to get you in so much trouble, think how many more fish you would have caught.
What are you talking about? Leaving a bite just to come in and get laid or something, or what? No. I don't know. I know what you're saying.
You know what I mean? Like, come on. Yeah, exactly. I can't. Well, to be fair though, I can't say that I've ever actually left a good bite for a chick. Like I've run late to like. Yeah. Oh yeah, the fucking boat's broken. Like whatever, like, right. But you know what I mean? Like there's been times where like, I don't know. I just think about like sometimes like where I would have fished more, or the nights I would have gone ikashibi, or I don't know. Well, I personally backburnered. I personally backburnered some fishing for women.
It's a dilemma that younger men go through. I mean, what I mean is I went through. I mean, obviously it's like priority is, like I got a hot one on the line and it's Friday night and rather than extend the trip another day or two, I'll come in to be there on Friday night or whatever.
Right.
I'm using that as a mundane example, but yeah, I know what you mean. And it could be let us there is a house in New Orleans they call the Rising Sun. It's been the ruin of many young men. By God, I know I'm one. You know what I mean?
Oh yeah.
So I mean, sure. I mean, it's part of the deal of being a male.
Yeah.
You get carried away.
Without a doubt. Any closing thoughts for future fishermen?
Do your homework and I don't know, just be persistent. Do your homework, and study what you're doing right before you do it, because the cost of everything is so high. You can't afford not. You got to make it every anchovy count.
Yeah, man. That's true. Yeah. I mean, I think about that sometimes. Like the entry into the fisheries is definitely harder now, without a doubt.
I don't know how they do it. Like I said, running the charter boat now, I'm out there getting paid, right?
Right.
And I watch these guys when I go by say the fish fat or go by OTEC or whatever, sea buoy. And I see these guys out and then I look at their rig and they got some pretty sharp boats out there. And I'm wondering how in the hell, I don't know if I could have paid for that boat, even if the fishing was as good as it was back in the day when it was really good. You know what I mean?
Yeah, I don't know. Again, like I don't know if that's living at mom and dad's compound or if that's just.
I have no idea, and I'm sure that for every scenario you see, there's probably
100 different scenarios.
Oh yeah, I mean, some of it they got an old lady that's got a good job. Some of it maybe they inherited some money and bought a nice boat rather than buying land or something, or they're still living in maybe their father has a coffee farm someplace and they're living in a house on the coffee farm and they got no rent.
Right. Well, I mean,
everybody else is paying $1,500 a month rent,
so or more,
or they're paying $1,500 to a boat payment, right?
Right.
They're not paying rent,
right?
So they can afford to do it,
right? Yeah.
I don't know. I don't know how they do it.
I mean, yeah, I don't know. I see it all the time where there's guys I know. I mean, I know some of the economics of fishing inshore, and I know that guys are way more money into their boats
Right.
than I am into my offshore boat. Like I know for a fact
Right.
there's guys that are like,
you're talking about inshore boats.
yeah, I'm talking inshore boats that are like would cost probably 100, 200 grand more than what I've got into my offshore sea mountain boat.
Right, yeah.
You know what I mean? Like easily.
Right.
Like I see that sometimes, just like, wow, big investment.
Right.
So
like in 1980, when I decided to go fishing full time, Ikashibi, once I really had a good summer, 1980, a really good summer. I would fish every night except for 2 nights, and I only went bald head one night that whole summer.
One night.
I bald head one night out of the whole summer.
Wow.
And I had at least a half a dozen nights where I caught 10 ahi or more.
Wow.
10 ahi in a 200-pound broadbill. You know what I mean? Something like that. Or 10 ahi in 2 broadbill. You know what I mean? It's like, but my rent was $260 a month, $260 a month.
Right.
I was living at Kona Holly, which is a state subsidized housing place by University of Nations, right next door there. I was paying $260 a month rent.
What was an average ahi worth back then?
Well, I had a deal with Jerry Kinney, and he told me at the beginning of the summer, he said, we could do this 2 ways. I can pay you a flat rate and no questions asked. Burnt, no burnt, I don't give a shit. Just bring me the fish. We got to ice them down, but I mean, make an effort, right? Drag them behind your truck from the ramp all the way to the ice house.
Right. Yeah, totally.
Yeah, but he said, I don't care how much you catch. I'll pay you 80 cents a pound all summer long. I don't care. You bring me 1,000 pounds or 100 pounds. He says, Tombos, I'll pay you 80 cents all summer long. Broadbills, $2.
Wow.
So you didn't have to worry.
Yep.
But hey, you get 1,000 pounds of fish.
What was the other?
Five ahi was 1,000 pounds, $800.
What was the other offer? So you could either take the 80 cents or
then the fear of the market price could fluctuate and
it could
burn and this and that,
right.
all kinds of scenarios.
So you just got a flat rate.
Yeah.
That seems like a pretty safe way to go.
But he had a fillet market in Southern California with some big supermarket. He was sending fillets.
Gotcha.
Quartered fillets in an LT3, like they'd all iced down and packed up and put in, a refrigerated deal and ship them off to some big chain. And most of that shit ended up on a barbecue anyway.
Right.
In Southern California, those guys just buy those steaks and throw them on the grill, right?
So the color wasn't super important anyways.
It doesn't matter, I mean.
Right.
Once you throw it on the grill, it changes color anyhow, right?
Right.
It's really burnt.
Oh shit! Well,
shit. But I think that's the year that he was paying cannery price. I think that year was when albacore was $1,600 a ton.
Yep.
So he was paying cannery price, but that was probably going to the same fillet market as probably the broadbill were.
Right.
It worked out because you 4 or 5 fish, you got your 1,000 pounds. That's $800.
I mean, honestly, that broadbill price is great. Do you know how bad the broadbill price gets sometimes? Like it gets super cheap still. Like especially when the longliners drop off.
Do they still have longliners just targeting broadbill?
Yeah, they do, but there's not that much of a fleet anymore. That most of the guys when they fish for it, like the Hawaiian swordfish fleet is as close to California as they are to
why would they
Hawaii.
Come, why would they come here?
Sometimes they come here because they're fishing so far up north. It's just closer to be to Hawaii. That
they go to San Diego or something.
Or
San Pedro or something.
But no, they still do unload. But every time I watch them unload, I can't figure out the economics of it because it's like one boat seems to do well, and then a series of boats come in over and over again that get like a lousy price. And so like I haven't ever really figured out why they still fish for it. I mean, they must make some money, otherwise they wouldn't keep doing it. But I mean, they routinely get like $3. One thing they always say is that the price is cheaper here because of shipping. Like the main markets are New York and Boston, right? So right off the bat, in order to compete with like Canadian fish or other U.S. caught fish, they're like $1 more a pound into shipping is one of the things they always say. But I don't know, man. I'm always amazed at how cheap swordfish is. It's not uncommon to see a bunch of swordfish over there that are like $1 or less, you know?
I remember when UFA was down by Koala Basin.
Yep.
They're right there next to tuna packers.
Yep.
Years ago. And be down there early in the morning. And if I was in Honolulu for some reason, I'd go over to watch the auction, watch these guys. And they had like a 16 or 20 foot stake side bed, a flatbed truck come in from one of the long line boats, the swordfish boats.
Right.
Loaded 5 deep on this 20-foot flatbed. And they're all bellied out and stuff, right? I mean, they're killed and gutted, and you're just looking at basically the log, right? But I'm looking at those fish and they, those fish are like 25 days old, and it's looking at them and going like, I don't think I'll eat that shit. I mean, one thing, if I go out and catch a broadbill at night and it's
a local one's definitely better.
10 hours old, right? And one is 24 days old.
Yes. Or older. Some guys fish 2 moons now. They put them on salt. They'll put them on saltwater ice, and they'll actually fish over 2 moon cycles. So they can be a swordfish can be way older than that. The bycatch that comes off those boats is so gnarly because the bycatch doesn't have the shelf life that the swordfish has. Right. That a lot of times the bycatch just stinks. Like it just reeks. Like it's so bad. But the swordfish can be held in saltwater ice, so it has a much longer shelf life, and that stuff can cut out fine. But some of it's gross, like no doubt.
Well,
yeah. Well,
it is what it is. Right?
It is what it is. I mean, that's what happens on trip boats a lot of times is that you have X amount of expenses, and so you need to get past X amount of weight to pay for your bills, right? So that's a lot of guys fish until they have where they know, like the mentality, which is I always think is a shitty mentality, is a lot of guys will fish until they know that they've got a profit, even if it's at the point of the fish not getting a good price, if you know what I mean.
It's what they call a point of diminishing return.
Yeah, exactly.
You reach this saturation point, and anything your return is just going to get worse after this certain point.
Yeah, but they do need X amount to cover their expenses, right? Yeah. So the bummer is that the early on fish, the price isn't good enough overall where the early on fish could justify just going in. So it's kind of a funky business model, really, if you think about it, right?
Well, in 81, 82, I spent the summers fishing Ikeshibi and Hilo.
Yep. And
landing all my fish at Suisan. And it seemed like all summer, the price was 50 cents. And they take the nickel.
Commission, right?
50 cents. And guys were getting like 12, 14, 15, 20 fish a night. And they get 50 cents. I said, why don't we all get together and everybody just catch 2 fish and get $2 a pound and leave them out there for tomorrow night? But these guys wouldn't do it. It was all about the ego. They I get 10. I put, I got a 24-foot rad and I put 8 in a box and I put 13 on the deck. Yeah, you got 50 cents a pound for them. You're just flooding your own market. But you can't get the guys you can't get them to.
Yeah, you can't get everyone on board.
You can't get them on board.
Well, that's to this day, you still can't get guys to go. Like there's always somebody that's willing to drop it pretty cheap, really. Right. I mean, it's gotten a lot better. I mean, since I've been in it, it's gotten a lot better. The floor is nowhere near as low as it used to be.
Right.
But I mean, it could go higher, in my opinion. It definitely could go higher, but as long as someone is willing to sell a fish for next to nothing, you're going to have that problem. Like what always blows me away, and I know it's just a marketing issue. What always blows me away is how cheap, like a lot of inshore guys will sell fish. Like I think a lot of people have a misconception that the mountain boats aren't getting paid as much for their fish as they are for the inshore stuff. I think because of the past, how fish were handled, and
there was a time when that was the case.
Right. Well, I think one thing, quality has come way, way up. You know, everything's gill and gutted stuff. Everything is like quality has just gone,
Right.
even in my time, has gone way up. Like
So what's the breaking point where you stop gill and gutting? Like
I gill and gut everything now.
10 pounds, whatever. I mean,
Anything, every and anything. It's just proven to be that much better of a fish. I take the guts out of no matter what size. Anything will keep. The guts are out, any species, except for Opa. And not that I catch that many Opa. You know, I've caught like 2 in the last
year.
Yeah, no, not even in the last multiple years. I haven't caught an Opa for a while.
That's because where you're fishing, or
because of where I'm fishing. Yeah, they're primarily further to the east, and usually in colder water. So they're just, when you get one, it's just kind of a passerby. It's been a while. I guess I got one 2019. I think it's the last time I caught one. Maybe
you're getting on a long line.
Yeah, I've caught one. We caught one Ikashibi. We got one on a lead line out of buoy 3, and that's the only one I've ever gotten hand lining. They catch them on jigs, you know, like in other places, but like on the East Coast, like those guys get them on jigs. But the only one I got one Ikashibi at buoy 3. It was the only thing we caught. It was just like sucked out there.
It was a weird deal.
It was just a weird deal, yeah. But yeah, like what I was saying is that they're, and exactly what you're saying is that the bottom line, like the bottom line is just too low. Like I would think with the inshore guys too, that they've got a day old fish, and maybe it's because they have other jobs and maybe it's market. Like I'm amazed sometimes that they'll sell like, you know, a little fish for like under $2 a pound or something. Like there's guys that are selling fish for $1 a pound, man.
Still,
yeah.
Roadside?
Well, to a roadsider that cheap, you know, like
the roadside guy puts his figures on top, right?
Yeah, I mean, he adds on to whatever they've got. Roadside at least has come up. I mean, the going roadside price is $3.50 a pound now. So I mean, if you sell it yourself, that's gone up. But I know, like,
what's that guy at Harlan's? The guy that what the hell's that guy's name? Used to be partners with Harlan. Now he was pretty much roadside. What the hell's that guy's name?
Well, Kelly is partners. Yeah, I mean, they sell roadside too. Like, I think they're at $3.50. On Maui, I've heard it as high as $5 now.
On the roadside?
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah. Like $4 is pretty steady. I guess it was like I talked.
That's whole fish too, right?
It's whole fish. Yeah. Yeah. Maui can't do the volume, but their price is better. And then Oahu's kind of weird. Oahu has guys that are paying a premium, like guys that have developed markets for a premium where they're paying really good money a pound to the guys. And then because of the auction and how cheap that place gets, there's a lot of people that are still accustomed to getting fish for just like nothing. It's like, so roadside's really weird over there. It's like very location to location. There's old longline fish that's cheap, and then there's local stuff where the prices come up quite a bit. Oahu's a weird island when it comes to roadside. It's a very strange market.
They selling cut fish on the roadside?
Some guys are licensed to sell cut fish. Yeah, they have like a certified kitchen. But I'm just talking at this time. I'm just talking whole price.
It's off the subject a little bit. Is Daryl still hanging around out there on the end of that pier?
Daryl passed away last year.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. No, he passed away last year over here. Unfortunately, rest in peace.
What happened to that boat?
I don't know who owns it. Gus, I talked to Gus about it a little bit. I'm not sure all the legality, but somebody who was a business partner in some way is living on the boat. It's not fishing.
It's still on the end of the pier.
It got moved up a little bit, but there's basically like a guy living on it.
On the same side?
It was right in the wedge in between 38 and it's probably where it was the last time you saw it. Yeah.
You know, between the rocks and the pier.
Yes. Yeah.
Inboard of the pier.
Yes. Yeah. No, Daryl actually passed away over here. Sadly, he was over here for a while. Gus was with him right to the end.
Would he have cancer or something like that?
He did. Yeah. I don't.
Yeah, who knows? Right?
Yeah. Well, yeah. I mean, he did have cancer. I don't know how much I should be talking about his health or whatever. But yes, no. Unfortunately, he passed away. Sadly. So.
Right. Well. Yeah, Jeff Hines passed away. You know that, right?
I heard that, man. He was fishing right to the end, huh?
Right. About 2 weeks before he passed. that's pretty much that's about as close as you could get. He went to the hospital. I took him to the hospital, and he actually called me up. He said, "I need a big favor." I said, "What's that?" He says, "I'm really messed up. I need somebody to run the boat for a couple of weeks. I need some rest." I said, "Okay, I got time off on my job because I only work 4 hours where I work part time
At the fish farm.
Yeah. And I said, I got lots of time on the books I could take off. I'll run the boat." So I went down and ran the boat for a couple of weeks, and then I ended up. He said, "I come in," and we came in at about 3/4 day. It came in. He said, "I need you to give me a ride to Kaiser." Well, I found him laying on the floor. He fell down and bleeding here and there, and it took me about a half an hour to get him up and out the door.
Oh man!
And I ended up taking him to the hospital, right? And he never came out. I called after he was in the hospital. I took him to the hospital, and I called his. So I actually took him to Kaiser first. Got him to Kaiser. He made his appointment, and they had his blood pressure was so low. They had to give him 2 IVs. And when he first went in there, his blood pressure was 70/30.
Whoa!
That's barely
moving.
alive.
Right.
And they gave him 2 units of IV and got it up to 90/45 or something. And they said, "Take him to the hospital." I drove him to the hospital, and then he went in. That was it. I called his daughter, one of his daughters. His daughters are named Linda and Sue, right? Linda Sue. Right?
Linda Sue, right? Yeah.
Anyway, I called the one that I knew I'd met before, and I called her up and said, "You better get over here. Your dad's really in bad shape." So she dropped everything and flew over. Stayed up in the room with him. He was in a private room. She got here and saw what was going on. She called her brother and sister, and they came over, and they were over here a week, and they were all in the room when he passed on.
Wow.
Yeah.
Heavy.
Yeah.
Heavy.
Yeah. So,
heavy. Well, he was an interesting character, wasn't he?
He was.
That guy was a salty dog.
He was definition of a salty dog. Captain Blood and Guts.
Captain Blood and Guts. How old was he? 83?
No. He was going to turn 81. He was going to turn 81 in January.
81.
Yeah.
But he fished
basically up to the very end.
Like very last few days, yeah.
2 weeks.
Last 2 weeks, yeah.
But he could. That when I went and got him off the floor at his place.
Yep.
There's no way he was ever going to get back on that boat. I could just tell, like, the last day. He was in bad shape. His energy level, everything was just, it's like one of those light bulbs on a rheostat. You turn it down, and just
each day was going down.
Before you get to the point where you click and you got nothing. Boom.
Oh man. Right. Man, there's so many legendary stories about him. He would be like a whole another great podcast, really.
Yeah, he's a lot of guys didn't really like him for one reason or the other, just because of his personality or whatever, and always kind of had like a chip on his shoulder to all the, he used to call them the big boys, like Marlon Parker, big boys, they're full of shit, they keep on saying they tag and release, but I don't believe a word of it. It's probably 100-pounder. They call it a 500-pounder, and on and on and on. I said, don't worry about that stuff, Jeff. Don't worry about that. Just let it go.
Yeah,
let it go.
Well, he was old school. It was interesting because he was tagging fish at the end, but man, he killed pretty much everything for his whole career, right? Like,
I crewed for him on and off over the years, just different times.
Yeah,
I was in between things, and he needed somebody, and I said, "What the hell?" Because he always paid cash.
And you really want the tax? You really want the IRS to hunt you down after this podcast, don't you?
Oh well, it was all cash, man. It was and he never took credit cards, so all his money was cash.
Right.
Yeah,
no, I know. I can actually remember him offering me a job, and he's like, and that's exactly how he said. He said, "It's all cash money." Yeah.
But I had days I was embarrassed because we just killed so many damn. We come in with like 3 or 4 marlin, right? We killed every one of them motherfuckers.
Oh yeah. He was a great fisherman.
Stack them up on the deck, and get them off there. That's when they used to pull them off the flying seafood used to take them off the back of the boat, right? Right there.
Yeah.
That was pretty crypt when you come in and they got the flying right there. They got junk. They pay you junk. Right?
Yeah.
But it didn't matter. You didn't care because
Yeah, they had that guy named Igor there. Remember? I don't remember what his real name was, but you remember the guy he was like the hunchback. They called Igor. Take your marlin.
Yeah. It was brutal. It was brutal, right? But if you were running a charter, like you didn't care. You just want to get the fucking thing off the boat so you could drink some beer and harness the boat off and go home and start it off again, right?
Right.
It's like, okay, well, you're not really care about the price too much because everybody say, well, they rip you off. They don't pay the top dollar and all that stuff. But hell, if you're running a charter, you've already been paid.
Yeah.
Right? And then.
Well, there's something to be said for the convenience of offloading and being done with it. And
big time.
Yeah.
Big time. Just drop it off and get rid of it.
Right. There's a lot to be said for that.
And you go by volume.
Right.
Cut you more.
But I'll tell you what, that place stank all the time, man. That was the worst smelling fish house. It really was, man. That fucking place reeked. I can almost smell it now. Like it was bad. You remember that?
They had, yeah, I do, but I'll do you one worse than that. Jerry Kinney ran this place called Volcano Isle.
Yeah.
And he had an acre of land there where the Toyota dealership is now.
Right.
And he had a cinder block building that had a big ice machine, like 2 or 3 ice machines, drop 5,000 pounds in 24 hours or something like that.
Right.
And a big room and then a freezer room, right? Big walk-in fish room, all refrigerated blowers and everything, right? And then parking all the way around. You could drive all the way. It was in the center. The building was in the center, and you could park. And they used to rent stalls out. You park your rad or park your skiff or whatever. And a lot of guys just park their boats right because one-stop shopping. You had a fuel pump there. Fill up your boat, park your boat, unload your boat, put ice. The forklift come out and put 8 bags of ice on your boat for you. Boom, boom, boom. $1 a quarter a bag. It's $12.50 at the harbor right now for a bag of ice.
Oh yeah, well, don't even get me started on the ice subject.
Oh man, but it was like $1 a quarter a bag, right? Anyway. So when Jerry retired, Suisan bought him out, right?
Okay.
And they started running the same operation, literally the same operation out of the same place. And one summer, I'm trying to remember the year now, like 83, 84, 84. There was so much fish, and they couldn't figure out how to get rid of the fish. They were stuck. Because they were catching fish in Hilo too. They couldn't just ship them over to Hilo. And they were, what are we going to do with all these marlin? Guys were catching 3 or 4 marlin a day, plus charter boats, plus the skiffs and everything. They had marlin stacked up in that room. Now the eyes, they could slip out the door pretty good. But they had so many fucking marlin, they had no idea what to do with them. And they were actually 4 deep in that refrigerated room.
Wow.
And stayed there. As a matter of fact, I know it was 84 because that's the year I caught that. I told you I caught that 600 pounder. And Jack Prettyman delivered it for me down there.
Right.
And so I went in there and dragged that fish out of there. I know what I did. I saw when I went in there and saw what was happening. And Ricky, there was a guy named
microphone. Sorry, I'm losing you.
Oh, there was a guy named Ricky Denise that ran that operation for Suisan.
Yeah. And
I went in and he was like, I don't know what I'm going to do. And he was like, perplexed, right? They're 4 deep in the room. I got more coming in today. I don't know what to do. So I said, that was the morning after I caught that 6. I said, Ricky, I'm going to take my fish back. He said, yeah, take it out of here. I don't care. So I went over there. I literally went over there where the University of Nations is.
Yep.
And donated that fish.
Oh, good.
Just take this fish. It's just going to rot. But the next day I went in there and the bacterial rate kicked off in that refrigerated room. And it was terrible. They end up taking truckloads and truckloads to the dump.
God, what a fucking shame, huh?
Well, when Jerry used to get stuck with that, when the marlin bite was really on, like during a billfish tournament or something, he would fillet them out. Fillet big slabs like this and put wax paper over them, and it's like stacked up.
Yep.
Like 10 long logs of fillets on a pallet and run it back in the freezer, and he'd freeze it.
Okay.
And he'd freeze 5 tons.
Wow.
Of marlin fillets during the summer when the bite was really on, the price was nothing.
Yep.
And then frozen, he'd ship all that to the fish cake factory in Honolulu, and they pay him whatever, and he'd make out.
Wow.
So he'd pay the fishermen 10, 15, 20 cents a pound, and then freeze the fillets. And they like later in the year, we'd get like $1 a pound. He'd ship the frozen fillets to, put them in a deal and ship them over to Honolulu, right?
Wow.
Fish cake factory. And they grind them up and make whatever they do to make fish cake, Japanese fish cake, right?
God, when did people start saying, okay, enough is enough? When did we see catch and release really start?
I think that about the 80s, right about along that time I'm talking about.
Yeah.
And they started doing it
because there's even when I got here, there was still quite a bit of killing. It's gotten less and less over the years, right? So like was it like a big deal? Like when someone let the first one go, or like?
No, because a lot of the guys that started were like, like guys like Marlon Parker and all the guys, kind of like they were already making enough money with their charter fees.
Right.
They weren't the bottom feeders, right? They were the guys that they already got enough. In other words, their charter fees, they made enough money, and they went in tournaments, and they had some guy buying them a big fancy boat and all that shit. So the money, the fish money part for Marlin
wasn't that big of a deal.
It wasn't a bag, and it's your stature that like, well, I'm not going to be involved in. I'm
right.
Hands off, right?
Well, you've probably seen it too. Like fish money is a weird thing on charter boats around here, anyways, because sometimes you're better off letting the fish go and you get more money on your tips, because there can be this really weird dynamic.
They don't like killing.
Well, people don't like killing them, or they think you're getting so much more money for the fish than you actually are, where you would have been like better off just letting them go. Like
you get $100 for a marlin,
yeah.
Right? You might as well get a big tip.
Right. Yeah. No, I think I've seen it every direction. Right. But obviously the best case scenario is when you could sell it and you got the big tip,
and you got the mount.
And then you got the mount. Of course, the mount's
the last marlin we put on that boat when I was running for Jeff a couple weeks ago.
Got the mount.
Mounted the fish. My commission alone, my share of the commission alone was like $445. And we sold the fish for $200 cash, some guy behind the boat with a pickup truck.
Right.
Just don't have to drive it anywhere. Just just roll it down to the end there, pull it off, put it in the truck, and here's the $200 and boom.
The mount thing is such a weird thing, right? Like
that's another whole issue.
Oh man. Well, you brought it up and I'm not going to stop now. Like the mount thing is such a crazy experience because believe it or not, I actually have a mount from my first sailfish, in Key West. And now I look back and I know exactly how the process works. And I think, interesting. Like the guy that sold us the mount, he used every lie that the not straightforward guys use, like the ones that are like embellishing or just like straight up, right. Yeah. Oh man. Like looking back now, he used every con there is to get that mount. And we just like, oh yeah, it's really the real bill. Oh yeah, it's really the real fins. Like, yeah. It's a fiberglass mount. So do you think I haven't sold a mount in years, right? I haven't been part of a mount in years, mostly because I'm commercial fishing or the people I take out.
I had nothing to do with the kid Sawyer. I don't know if you knew Sawyer or not.
I do know him, yeah.
And he's good at selling mounts. But he starts off, and I just let him do it. And I personally, like when I had the Dragon, I didn't push him. If they push me for a mount and hey, I really want to do this, then I would do it.
Right.
But I wouldn't suggest it. I'd tell them it's a replica. Yeah. I said the replicas are better than the originals. They'll last 5 times longer.
Which is true.
Yeah.
The mounts are awesome. Don't get me wrong. The mounts are awesome.
I never pushed them because I didn't want to do a ration of bullshit.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? I wanted my reputation to, I personally mounted bills. I did a lot of bills. Probably did 150 bills over the years. Mount the bills.
Right. Those are awesome.
The real bills.
Right.
You know what I mean?
Yeah, you actually did. Well, that's a different thing.
Yeah.
You're really getting the legitimate bill. Those are awesome.
Right.
Like I know those are Diamond Dave's got some great ones in the other room, like some awesome bill mounts. And yeah, those are great. But I think like a lot of people, and maybe some people that are listening don't even know what I'm alluding to, but like there's a big part of the sport business where you're, you sell a bill or you sell a mount and you get a commission. And like what a lot of people don't realize is that that commission can be, 50% of the total sale. So like and then where the taxidermy company makes their real money is on shipping. And like a lot of people don't
read.
Yeah, they don't read the fucking fine print.
They're paying $1,400 for a crate.
Right. A cardboard box with like, have you seen like some of them? Like I can kind of understand why people get pissed off. Like some of like the crating fee will show up and it's it's cardboard with wire ties to it or like a fucking like twisted on kind of like, if you look at it and you're like, how is that? Like, because if you read the fine print on a lot of them, right, it will say that the mount can be up to 50%. Shipping can be up to 50% of the mount cost, right? Well, fuck, dude. Some of those big marlin mounts are thousands of dollars. So, like, you get like a fucking $5,000 mount, and then you get hit with $2,500 with shipping or something, and it's a fucking piece of cardboard. You can kind of understand where people are like, what? Like, what just happened there? You know what I mean?
Well, yeah.
Yeah. So, but I will say,
what's the real difference between a Buick and a Chevy?
What is it?
Not much.
A
little Signia here and maybe a little higher priced leather over here and a little this over there. And basically, it's the same damn engine block and the same door handle and everything else.
Right. Right. Well, see, I actually want some mounts for around my house, and my dad had contacted me. He's got a friend who's trying to sell a few right now, and they're not the best mounts. You know how some of them don't have like a good eye, and the eye is like so important on the whole thing. But the bummer is, and I haven't seen what she wants for a price on them yet. But like, what happens so often is that people that paid for them retail, like they don't realize like, it's hard to recoup a lot of that because 50% was a commission and probably 25% of that was shipping. So what's the real value? What's the real resale value of that item once you eliminate that? You know what I mean? So hopefully she's not going to get stuck. I would like them. They're not the best mounts, but they would look okay around here.
What are they? On Marlin or?
One's a stripey, one's a spearfish, and one's an Ono. Mm-hmm. I guess she bought them for an X, and now she's
over the X.
Well, she doesn't want to look at the fucking things anymore. I guess they remind her of the X or something.
Are they on the East Coast or something?
No, they're here.
Oh,
they're here. So like, I want them. Like, but I also just don't want them. Like, see the wall you're up against there. I've been saving that wall for a real big one for a long time. Like, I want to put a slob on the wall, not like just a fucking little one, like a proper big one. But I'd also like to be able to get it at like, not 10 grand delivered. So that's kind of one of these days, you know what happened 2 times. I've had like dream mounts offered to me when I didn't own a house. I had nowhere to put them. And I'm like, well, fuck, what am I going to do? Move this from like boat to boat. And now since
storage space.
Yeah. Like, so you're going to pay all that money? Like, God, a storage unit's fucking ridiculous these days too. So now that I have this dream wall for my big mount, I haven't been offered any, and
it'll come.
Yeah, I look once in a while, I'd love to have a big mount right there, like a proper big one,
Like you're talking 5 or 6?
Oh, bigger, man. It's got to be fucking like a real, like.
Well, you got a pretty good wall here.
Yeah, I mean, I've been saving that wall for. I want like a proper big one. Like I've been saving that one for a big one. I think it would look good there.
Yeah, we got the space.
Yeah, decorated an early fish. It would go with the rest of the motif.
I can see a nice 50-pound owner right above the window.
Well, yeah, I was thinking that too. I actually that's where I thought that of the mounts this woman has, those are the nicest ones she's got. So for sure.
Yeah.
Will.
All right.
You're the man, dude.
Well, thank you.
You are the absolute man. And thank you so much for being here. I really appreciate your time. It's been an absolute honor. And who knows, maybe we'll even get you back in here again.
I don't know. I might have run out of stories.
I doubt you ran out of stories. I'll tell you what I really like about this podcast is you went to some places I didn't know.
Went deep into the well.
Yeah, man, that's the stuff people love. I love it. So, thanks again, man.
Yeah.
And thank you so much, bud.
You're welcome. Certainly
All right,
welcome.
brother.
Yeah. Bye.
Aloha.
Okay. Oh man. Wow. So what's the next process? What do you do from there?
Well, first I should technically hit end. Well, I'm going to end it. So thanks again, guys.
Yeah.
Okay.